right. Remind everybody that this meeting will be recorded. Recording will be subsequently available for public listening. Sederunt.
Thank you, Chairman. With 15 members present, I have apologies from Councillor Graham Bell.
I'm not sure about Councillor Simon. I know his father wasn't too well over the weekend, so whether he's still poorly, I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Collins puts his apologies in as well, please.
And Nicol.
Councillor Gilroy's apologies.
Do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, before we get into the formal part of the business, I'm sure the committee want to place on record their congratulations and thanks to all the officers involved in the organisation running of the Commonwealth Youth Summit held on the 6th, 7th, 8th of June 2014. There were almost 200 delegates from 29 Commonwealth countries and nearly all the local authorities in Scotland. Director of the UK Edinburgh Awards Scheme has congratulated the Council how well the event was organised and run. So I think we should have the issue minuted. And I know myself, when I spoke to people from other authorities and from other countries, they were very, very effusive in their praise for how it was run. And I've already written myself to the officers involved, thanking them for making this a very, very successful event. So I think we'll have that minuted as part of this meeting. Thank you very much. We move on to the meeting of the 15th of April 2014. We'd moved. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Geddes, thank you.
No, sir, with respect. I'm not entirely sure that that is a correct minute. And I would refer you, Chair, with your leave, to page 4 and the reference, as it were, to standardisation, which I actually raised on the day about previous leases, etc., and arrangements which had been entered into with such as tenants and community groups, and raised the issue about the standardisation of these. Can I have clarification that that is incorporated in what is in the minutes, Chair? I'd be grateful.
Yes, Councillor Geddes.
Yes, what, sir?
We'll incorporate it into the minute. I think it's covered by the paragraph 3, Roman 3. Unless I'm misunderstanding, Councillor Geddes.
The point I'm making, sir, is that I feel that given what I raised, that and reading the minutes, I don't think there's an entirely proper interface. And as I say, it's really clarification that I'm seeking this morning, Chair. Endeavouring to be to be helpful. The next question, of course, on the back of that would be in relation to 5. It's Roman numeral 5. Monthly updates would be provided to relevant council officers and members on a ward basis to ensure that they're kept appraised of progress. And my question there, sir, would be, when's that going to be implemented? I had thought, in fact, that would be implemented, if not with immediate effect, it would be as early on in the process as we possibly can.
I think, Chairman, the member of staff who's undertaking this work has been doing preliminary work, and once she starts meeting with community groups, etc., she will then commence keeping members informed. There's been nothing happened to date because of the background work she's had to do. There were also other issues that arose which I can explain to Councillor Geddes offline.
Well, I think it would also be helpful, sir, not only to have it explained to me, but I'm sure, without being presumptuous and speaking for colleagues, I'm sure that I'm not the only one in the meeting today, who would have these issues or have these concerns. I think it's absolutely imperative, Chair, that we make this process as transparent and as effective as possible.
There were personal issues with the member of staff, Councillor Geddes. That's why I didn't want to do it in a public meeting.
Well, just for those of us who can't absolutely remember what the issue was about, I mean, are we wanting to change the minute? Is that what the member is trying to do, or are we agreeing the minute as it stands?
Alistair, I'll let you come back in.
I'm very grateful to you, sir. Thanks very much. No, I was really seeking clarification, Chair. I mean, I am not endeavouring to have a minute change for the sake of changing it. It would be helpful, in fact, perhaps if we could minute the clarification, if that would be appropriate, that Mr. Haswell has helpfully provided. But as I say, I'm not saying that that's an incorrect record. What I did preface my remarks by saying, Chair, was that I wasn't sure if it was. I felt there was a bit of lack of clarity there. Now, I've heard Mr Haswell, I've got the clarity. It might be no bad thing with your leave, sir, in fact, incorporate that into the approval of these minutes if that's competent.
Happy to do so and happy to move. If you're happy to second then? Okay, thank you. Okay, move on. Item 4 is the Director's end of year assessment of the business plan performance. This is Mr Haswell's end of year assessment in relation to his first year as Director of CCS. Members have been issued with the coloured copies, hopefully, and they brought them with them. Shows good progress in some projects, and there are exception reports where projects are not meeting their targets. But I'm sure that Mr Haswell and his team will be happy to answer any questions which members have. Do members have any questions?
Thanks very much, Chair. It's really just bringing 2 or 3 together. When you look at the first exception report on page 19 of 186 with the coloured report, looking at staff who have completed training, and also when you go to the last one, the implementation of community customer service Department of Health and Safety action on page 33. Obviously, it's really important that we keep staff informed and updated as we go forward with the changes that are actually happening within Council. What I don't want to see is this stalling of the health and safety action plan moving forward. It shows a lack of concern for the staff and clients when we need to move this particular area on. And I think one of the areas where we can improve is actually on the training of staff to accredited standard, which it does improve the welfare of those members of staff who actually receive it. And I see later on in the actual business plan that we're potentially going to reduce the targets, potentially, because we've still to discuss that. I think it's really important that we put the resource in place to ensure that training is available for those staff and volunteers, but also making sure that the health and safety welfare of those staff are on a higher limit. It says in the last page, on page 33, in the improvement action, a request to CCS committee to move this project to an annual roll-on programme, but it will still be reported twice a year in the last paragraph. I think that's downgrading the importance of the health and safety action plan of this particular department, because we have a lot of forward-facing staff within the community customer service centres. We need to make sure they have the training which actually helps the health and safety action plan.
I couldn't agree more with the member, sir. We have now appointed an officer who will be the health and safety support officer. Can I reassure members that operational health and safety, toolbox talks, training, everything like that for individual members of staff continues. What the support officer will do will be to draw up an action plan at a strategic level to enable us to be sure that things are moving forward. But I would reassure members that health and safety training is ongoing. I think what I discovered when I looked at the training, the customer services training, we were extremely ambitious in what we did. The amount of staff time, it's not a course that you can do in 24 hours. I think it's an 8 to 10 week course, and the numbers of staff that could be released to undertake the course and afford the time to undertake the course was not as high as was originally anticipated. I am looking at it. I'm not downgrading it, sir. What I'm saying is that there's little point in putting a performance indicator in on day one that you know you're not going to achieve. I'm not downgrading it. I would reassure members of that. But the course does take longer than had been expected. Plus the fact you require mentors in there, and that means mentors' time as well. So it is going to be a longer term project, but we will ensure that all customer services staff are trained. We started off and we're doing it with the libraries and integrated library staff, and we will move through all cadres of staff who are involved in the front line. So I would reassure the member that I understand exactly where he's coming from.
Happy with that, Councillor Driver?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm pretty reassured that side of things, and I'm also reassured that health and safety reports will come to this committee and other committees twice yearly.
Okay, can I have Councillor Garrison, Councillor Marshall, then Councillor Maitland?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's basically a procedural type suggestion with your leave, sir. You know, this the report is or the appendices in the report, as far as I'm concerned, on three parts. You've got the two exception reports, you know, the second of which is the project exceptions, and then you've got, for want of a better term, the frontispiece. And I wonder, Chair, with your leave, if it might not be worthwhile going through them sequentially, and then that way, rather than sort of member A picking up, you know, an item in Appendix 2, and then member B, you know, going back to the frontispiece, because I know that my colleagues have issues that they would want certainly to raise in relation to the frontispiece, what I'm calling the frontispiece, Chair, with your leave, of course.
Happy to do so. Go to page 19, an exception report. Any questions on that one? No. Page 20. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just on 19, I know Alex gave a response to Councillor Dryborough, but I had the same kind of concern. Now, I have no problem with readjusting a target if the original target was not realistic, but based on after 2 years, we'll still only have 28% of the staff trained, and on that kind of basis, it's got to take another 6 years to have the 100%. So I'm still a little bit concerned about that, and we maybe need to see a long-term, well, we may need to see something about, how we plan to actually get everyone trained and what kind of timescale that's going to be.
Sir,
I'm happy to take this away and have another look at it, sir, and come back to members.
I think that's a good idea. Okay, can we move on to page 20. Any questions, page 20? Councillor Maitland, was that the page you wanted to come in on? Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've misunderstood the process a bit. My question related to page 12, which is what I took as the first part of the report before we even got to the appendices. So if I can ask a question on that, with your leave. So just first picking up on DG8 CCS, the total procurement savings, obviously there's information not currently available there, and it was really just to get a wee bit more detail on when that would be available.
I'm not entirely certain when it will be available, sir. There are issues with PCOS. I will take this away and look at it individually and come back to members. The procurement savings are being achieved, but the statistical information just wasn't available online. So I will get that information and come back to members.
Thank you. Well, it sort of ties in with two others which are separate, and the concern really, or the question centres around how joined up we are in thinking about this, because we've got CCS 01 P03, the Integrate Customer Service Centres, registrations and libraries, and also on page, let's see now, yeah, page 15, CCS 04 P04, develop an asset management plan to identify investment priorities and maximise use of the buildings. Now, a lot of these might depend on the development of the area profiles, which I see is also an exception report, but we've got two separate performance indicators there, and I'm just wondering just how in tandem are they working together, because they seem to relate and depend on each other to a large extent. I was just wondering if there's a bit more clarity in that.
They are working in tandem, sir. The integration, the councillors have already approved the integration. That centres on libraries and other buildings. The other one relates to office buildings, etc. So they are working in tandem. I have two members of staff leading change on these two projects, and they work together. So we are taking the thing forward in tandem.
Anything else that particular matter? Councillor Carson.
Back to page 19. Well, Chair, it's not going to be helpful if we try to go through this at the pace of a racehorse. I had a valid question. I had my hand up.
Okay, I'll take it this time, but keep up in future, okay? Now hurry up. What is it? Page 19.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's completely unreal. I don't know whether there's a bet on or something we've got to get finished by 12:30, but I've got a question.
Just with regards, we did start off with exception reports, which doesn't cover the full, so someone started off on page 19, probably it would be easier going on because some questions may be on indicators that are green. So it's maybe best starting off at 11 and just going through those each page so that you're covering the full, all the key performance indicators. So if we start on page 11,
I'm happy to do that, but I thought we wanted to start on the exception reports, but if we want to start on page 11, I will do so. Councillor Geddes?
Again, sir, I'm grateful for your indulgence. I obviously didn't make myself clear. That's exactly, what I suggested we should do, what Councillor Marshall has just reaffirmed. Forgive me for my lack of clarity if that was the cause of the problem.
Thanks for that, Councillor Geddes. Okay, I'll go back to page 11. Any issues in page... Councillor Marshall.
yeah, page 11, it's obviously the two at the bottom of the page. It's the average number of days lost by non-teacher, all other non-teacher local government employees through sickness absence, 10.16 days, and percentage of days lost per employee through sickness absence as a percentage of total possible attendances. Obviously, both these are red. This has been a long-standing issue, and obviously appreciate the complexities behind it. I think one of the big issues in the past was return to work interviews, and that's all been resolved with occupational health. I just wondered, on these, it does refer to it in the exception reports that part of it is due to long term. I just wanted to know, is it mainly the long term sickness absence of just a small amount of individuals in both of these that is actually reflecting that we're above what we set as a target or below?
Mr. Hay, do you want to come in that one?
Thanks, Chair. I think the fact that our absence figures were perhaps not reaching the targets that we had anticipated this year was one of the main reasons we had a session with HR colleagues and all our service managers and principal officers 2 weeks ago to look at this in a bit more detail. There's a number of issues that when we drill down into the background over the last 12 months that came out. One was that the council's approach to what's referred to as the Bradford factor has changed, in that the Bradford factor that highlights a member of staff's absence, the threshold has been dropped quite considerably. That therefore results in more members of staff appearing on that list, which gives us more, I suppose, advance warning to try and get in and look at the detail. I would probably say that 70% of the absence is in relation to long-term things that, once you look into it, other than supporting the member of staff, there's not a lot more the council can do to get them back to work quicker. I'm thinking of like surgical operations, limb breakages, that type of thing. The thing that the Bradford factor has highlighted is where there's patterns of absence, say for example a Friday and a Monday, or frequently on Fridays and Mondays. That should set alarm bells for managers, and the fact that we've now got a more robust approach to return to work interviews, I think our figures have improved considerably as a result of us giving it a bit more attention to detail. So there's a number of factors, but certainly it is something that CCS is very actively managing on an ongoing basis.
Thanks, Chair, and it's exactly the same issue. How many of the absences, Harry, are actually stress-related or musculoskeletal? And I'd be a bit wary about using Friday, Monday, because this is a 5/7 service. It's open 7 days a week in some departments.
Thanks, Chair. The Friday Monday was just an indication that the way the Bradford scale is established, that it provides an early warning system, I guess, to things like to patterns of absence, and the Friday Monday was just maybe a typical example of the kinds of things that should set alarm bells. In terms of stress, etc., I would say we're on average with the rest of the corporate council as a whole. It's not something that has raised particular alarm bells that requires more attention than perhaps another council service.
Thanks, Chairman. I was going to pick up this in the exception reports, but happy to pick up on it now in regards to the same issues. So it says in the improvement actions that we're looking at it corporately. There's human resources have procedures in place, but what actually have we got in place? How much support have we got in place for the staff that's on the ground where they're affected, whether it's short term or long term? Probably mostly in the long term, but that's the guts. I would like to understand that fully. What resources and have we got in place to make sure that everybody's all the staff are fully supported?
It's the responsibility of line managers to support their staff. There are rules in place. If a member of staff is off on sick leave, the manager is meant to contact them, ascertain they're okay. There's a subtlety there. The difference between supporting somebody and being seen to try to force them to come back to work early. So staff are trained in that, and it's a line management responsibility. The council has policies across the piece that all line managers should be applying, and that includes direct contact with staff by telephone and indeed in person.
The one thing I was wanting to hear is about training, if it was needed as well, Chairman.
We did a refresher course a fortnight ago for all line management. Principal officers are then meant to train their individual line managers within their service. So we have had a refresher course as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Chair, and it's one that where the Health and Safety Subcommittee has also looked at this and referred the issue back to the Service Committee for their consideration. And while this is an annual report, I think it's something that we need to drill down on and get a separate report, because Harry's referred to, as indeed other members have referred to, stress issues and other related issues, and it's the impact that has on anyone going off on other employees. And I'm thinking more of swimming pools, where if your numbers drop to such an extent, the impact that would have on customers. And equally, this is in some of our customer service units, where longer queues could accumulate on absence and so forth. And then there's the other side in terms of return to work. And while there's a robust, as we're hearing from Harry, a robust regime in place, then if an individual is off with stress, it's how that person returns to work, if indeed they're being asked to return almost to the same situation that they found themselves when they went off with the stress. So I think it does require a report, not just an annual report to say we are not hitting our target on it and that absences are on the increase. We need a separate report so we can drill down on this. And I would hope that I'll request it and ask that come in early course.
Maybe provide reassurance for Councillor Scobie before agreeing that we will bring a report. In terms of swimming pools, we would not operate a pool with too few staff. We bring in temporary staff and we have arrangements in place to ensure managers know on the morning if somebody doesn't turn out to work, they've got to get somebody to replace them. So can I give you that assurance, sir? That's a health and safety issue that would be a step too far. I do take the point in terms of customer service centres and indeed other offices. I will bring something back to members just to explain how we go about addressing these issues as and when they arise.
Thanks. Willie, I'll give way to Willie if you want back in.
Yeah, just to come back, and Mr Hoswell has had a discussion on temporary, casual and so forth, and no doubt we will return to that in terms of how we do engage people. My concern is the impact, and if it does result in swimming pools closing because we don't have enough staff, etc., then we as a committee are entitled to know that. That was my point there, and I take the assurance being given by the director. Again, there is the impact on the reduction in staff. If it has the impact,
that more people are queuing up to be attended to, then we equally I want to hear that as to the impact of it, and also how we are improving on our services to our employees, if indeed they are under stress and stress-related issues, in how we are dealing with that as the purse gets tighter, more and more, less and less people asking to do more and more. That's the issue I'm raising, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I want to build on what Willie's just said there, because this particular KPI and the whole issue of maximising attendance is actually, or should be, a welfare issue. Yet all the reporting here is centred around management of people not being at work, right? Without looking, because the welfare issue should look at the reasons why they're not at work and how we're going to change that. And we've actually got no evidence whatsoever of that in here, because to increase the number of interviews, right, isn't going to take away the problem. In fact, it exacerbates the problem, because people are terrified to go into the interviews because they feel as though they're getting the third degree, right, as to why they weren't feeling well 3 or 4 days ago. And a lot of that's down to, I appreciate, individuals no following proper procedure. So we just need an assurance from Mr. Haswell, I would suggest, that his staff are trained not only in the implementation of it, but the spirit of it, which is to actually keep the workforce healthy, not to make sure they're at their desk. There's a subtle difference.
Absolutely, Chairman. That the staff are training that. That's why I made the point to Councillor Carruthers. There's a subtle fine line to be drawn there in approaching staff who are off on sick leave. I can assure the members that the staff are trained to approach this on a sympathetic basis. Sickness is not a disciplinary issue, it's not a grievance issue. Sickness is an issue which we're required to address, but nevertheless it's got to be done on a sympathetic basis with the welfare of staff in mind, and that's how managers approach it. I can assure the member of that. If it's got evidence of somebody being scared to come into a return to work interview, I would like to get that, and I'll deal with that. I have no evidence to support any suggestion that staff are terrified to come into return to work interviews. I've nothing to suggest that, but if Councillor Ferguson is aware of an individual or individual circumstances, I'm happy to take those off him. Not in the meeting, please.
Can I come back on that? Well, maybe suggest we have a confidential survey of all the staff with a third party, and you might actually find that you might get a true and honest answer, Director. I don't take any away from what you're saying, and I totally believe that you believe what you're saying is right. But I'm talking about reality out there in the departments. That's what I'm talking about.
The outcome of the stress survey doesn't bear that out, sir. We've just completed a stress survey, the results of which were reported to the last Health and Safety Subcommittee. No Health and Safety, the Joint Safety Subcommittee with the trade unions. The returns from the stress survey don't bear that out. But I will double check that, and I'll come back to Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, moving on to page 12. Any issues in page 12? Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask about the customer strategy. Now, this obviously is about the ways of communicating with people. I would like to know a very specific question, which is about when this will be completed. Because the due date was the 31st of December 2013, and it's not absolutely clear. I see that we have to have further engagement with members, Chairman, and indeed with corporate management team, but the timescales on that are not entirely clear to me. I wonder if we could have some help on that. The exception report is on page 29.
Thanks, Chair. The focus of our customer strategy is really to ensure that our channel strategy, as it's referred to, fully reflects modern expectations. And I think something that we've picked up very clearly is, for example, the way customers and current non-customers use and access our web needs to be totally refreshed and looked at. I think the feedback we've had from members of the public is that they wish to see a lot more transactions being able to do through our web presence. That's something we're looking at the moment. In the next report, members will see our refreshed business plan for 2014-15, and the timescales for our strategy is in that, Councillor Maitland. But certainly the focus has got to be not so much on what we think the customer wants, it's what the customer tells us they want. And one thing that has come out loud and clear is that we need to be a lot more innovative in terms of our web presence. That's not to say that the other channels, face-to-face, telephone, etc., is still not going to be available for members of the public, but they need to be able to make informed decisions. So the aim is to get the customer strategy and all its ancillary documents all in place this financial year.
Yeah, Chair, it relates to what Jane has just raised in terms of customer strategy, and I'm intrigued by what Harry was saying in modern expectations and web going on to customer wants. As far as I understand, and I'd be interested on any survey that comes out in terms of customer satisfaction, what the customer wants, in relation to the Stranraer Library, and I refer back to or on to the Integrated Customer Service Centres registration in libraries with localities, and it has a 1st April 2013 to 31st of March 2015, a 2-year span where we're hitting 42%. As we are currently sitting, the library and the integration of services had a knock-on effect on other parts of the delivery of services, and indeed there is a programme of further closures on this particular issue in Stranraer, and we are still sitting with 2 one-stop shops, in the whole integration of services. That has to be doubly manned almost in one part, to the other part where the customers are saying that they are not happy with the integration, the privacy of the services that are being delivered, someone going forward with a benefit check or benefit issue, and the other one behind listening to all the individual's personal information, while the person was only in to change their library book. So I'm not sure that we've got this entirely right, and it's the strategy in terms of the survey back in terms of customer satisfaction that concerns me, and how this whole thing is rolling out still with 2 one-stop shops in Stranraer.
Chairman, we don't have 2 one-stop shops in Stranraer. I don't like disagreeing with the member. What we have is we have an integrated service in the library, and anyone who goes in there to make inquiries about benefits should be treated and dealt with separately. There are booths provided. It would be the same anywhere else where there was a queue of people. You don't ask people for their personal information where there's a queue, whether they're there for a library book or also in for a benefit inquiry. What we have in Sun Street is an office which will be a working office. It requires a reception desk. The reception desk is manned because people come into the main building, and as with any other office, we have a reception desk here, but this is not an integrated facility. There is a reception desk which is manned by 2 people at the moment. It serves social work, planning, licensing, and I can't remember the other area. The benefits service will in fact all be in the library building within the current financial year. That's part of the integration service. So anyone making a benefit inquiry will have a benefit advisor available at all times to deal with their inquiry, and it should be dealt with privately in the booths provided. But I will go back and look at that, Councillor Scobie. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that there's 1 booth, so the reference to booths available in the library needs to be checked, but my understanding only 1 booth is available and used, whereas the one in Sun Street has 4 booths, and what the Director has described bears no reflection on members, and I'm sure others could speak on this issue in terms of whether it's a one-stop shop or not. It's there, it's used as a one-stop shop. People still go into Sun Street wanting to pay their taxes, their council tax, seek other information because it is regarded as a one-stop shop. It was intended to a mezzanine floor with offices and everything else, it cannot get shut because the whole thing hasn't been, in my opinion, properly thought out. No doubt the director will come back and say this is what we had intended, but it may not be working. In my opinion, it's not working.
I'm not going to argue with Councillor Scobie's opinion, sir. Basically, what I will say is the intention always was that Sun Street would become the centre for social work, and we've emptied a building to bring social workers in there. We'll also be closing Ailsa House in the not too distant future. There will be work undertaken within Sun Street, and the benefits unit will be moved to the library. I will look at the issue of booths in the library if they're insufficient. We have a running record of people who attend Sun Street. I'm quite happy to share the statistics with Councillor Scobie. We do not now have people trying to pay their council tax in Sun Street. I'm looking at Harry. He'll have seen the up-to-date records.
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow on from Mr Haswell, certainly it was anticipated for the first month of the changeover that until people realised that, and it was fully promoted, that the services they previously accessed in Sun Street was transferred to the library, that some would come up to Sun Street, they would either see the signage or be told by a member of staff that that particular transaction was now carried out at the library. We have kept records that demonstrates the flow of customers into Sun Street and also to Stranraer Library. And as Alec mentioned, for example, we've got building control, we've got CCS, we've got licensing, we've got social work, who are all permanently based in Sun Street, and inevitably members of the public have got legitimate reason to come in and visit them. We use existing staff within that building who do their day-to-day work, and when a member of the public happens to come in off the street into the main reception at Sun Street, they stop what they're doing and deal with that member of the public. So the cost of that, there's no additional revenue consequences of doing that. I'm quite happy to share the stats in terms of the volume of people that come in and the purpose of their visit, if that's helpful.
Thanks very much.
Happy to receive those, Chair, and hopefully the committee could receive the same.
I think if you have a word with Mr Hay at the end of the meeting. Moving on to page 13. Any queries on page 13?
Thank you, Chair. It was actually just a question about delivering community empowerment. I noticed that the number of community groups supported is 775, way above the target of 576. So just for more information, is there a cost implication in terms of how we resource this exceptional number of community groups supported, and is there an ongoing resource implication for that?
Thanks, Chair. Certainly our work with building the capacity of communities, which really what community empowerment is all about, is really core business for a lot of our development staff, either in leisure and sport, within CLD, within the area framework offices. So it's really the main purpose of their remit, and it could range from things such as working with a group that wants to develop an emergency resilience plan. It could be working with a sports group that wants to perhaps develop their own facility. It could be about a group that wants to develop a play park or an open space, etc. So there's quite a wide range of different groups and organisations that fall under that category. One thing that we've talked through as a management team is that sometimes if you're victims of your own success, there's only an infinite amount of groups in Dumfries and Galloway, and perhaps the more successful we are in year 1, 2 and 3, what we try not to do is count the same group more than once in any given financial year. So if, for example, Community Learning and Development has worked with a group, we try not to count that again if the Leisure and Sports Service has worked with that group. And the whole idea is to perhaps create more vibrant, sustainable communities by a little bit of early intervention, giving a group the support they need, and that depends, I guess, on the social capital within that group. Some perhaps need very basic support in terms of preparing a constitution, etc., but others are very, very well established and maybe need a bit more advice in terms of funding sources, etc. So I would see that as core business about what CCS is really all about. So it's part of our ongoing revenue budget.
Thanks, Chair. It's at the top of page 13, the number of volunteers supporting the delivery of CCS activities, regional. What's intriguing me actually is the narrative, how are we performing? We're 6% below target and believe this is because we are using a more robust approach to recording of data. Normally that phrase would mean if we were under-reporting. Does that mean we've been over-reporting?
That's correct. I made reference to the fact that some instances in the past, two different parts of CCS service have reported the same return. So what we've tried to do is cut out duplication. So if, for example, we've worked with a community group with a library service, it'll not be counted again if that group so happens to have worked with the leisure and sports service. So that's what we're referring to when we say a more robust approach to counting these details.
Thank you, Chair. Bottom of page 13, number of attendances for physical activities in Dumfries and Galloway. With the change of the leisure and sports facilities to education booking these, this, I presume this will be the last time this KPI actually appears, because it's my understanding that education will not be recording the number of visits, and they're not doing that at the moment. It's only the number of bookings. It's quite a concern because it's an indicator of how well leisure and sport are performing, and I would have thought just with the changes this is going to disappear, and we're not going to have an idea of just exactly what people are doing across the region.
Thanks, Chair. My understanding, although I'm not operationally responsible for the Leisure and Sports Service, is that the attendances will still be recorded. I mean, when bookings are made, there'll still have to be some approach to capturing who's used it on what frequency. Whether the Education Service will capture it in the same way as CCS has done in the past, I'm certainly happy to get back to the member with that detail.
Thanks, Chair. The concern is it doesn't appear that the janitors that are open the facilities are actually doing that, and as far as I'm aware, there's no questions asked at the time of booking. It's basically, I'm booking a hall, and this, it's not just the KPIs that's concerning, it's also how the individuals are now being charged for the use of facilities. The anecdotal evidence I've had, there's been a drop-off in people using sporting facilities in the Stewartry because of the change in the way the facilities are booked. And we're not going to get an indication of that drop because ultimately the way that this KPI is recorded is changed.
There was no intention to change it, sir. I'll have to go back and investigate that. My understanding was that the information would still be ungathered because it remains a KPI. The fact that the booking system goes through the education service should not alter the fact that people are recorded as having used the facility. So I'll double check that and come back to Councillor Carson if I may. There should be no change. If there is, it wasn't intentional.
Happy with that?
Yeah, returning to the question on volunteers, Chair, and I'm not expecting volunteers to take the place of full-time employees, but I would hope that we have a policy of encouraging volunteering within our establishment, and that's across the board, from leisure and sports, swimming pools, etc., to any other activity. You know, I take it that is the case, is just to confirm or reaffirm our position on volunteers.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I've got to say that across CCS in particular, volunteers are absolutely crucial to the range of services that we deliver. This could range from a voluntary management committee in a sports club, it could be an arts group, it could be a youth club, etc. And I think the impact of the legacy programme that we've had is perhaps one of the underlying reasons why the volunteering as a concept has really raised its profile, not just in Dumfries and Galloway, but nationally. And I think that's starting really to pay dividends. We don't necessarily treat volunteers as a means to do work or tasks that staff should do. It's very much a complementary and a partnership approach. And in terms of things such as child protection training, health and safety training, a volunteer is deemed to be treated exactly the same as a member of staff. And very often we get groups or indeed individuals coming to us to say they would really like to volunteer in a particular aspect of their local community, and our role is to try and give them the tools and the opportunities to do that to the extent that the volunteer wants.
Just in the back of that, we had an interesting meeting yesterday with the Rural Affairs Committee. It was one of the issues was raised that part of getting your benefits was that you either apply for jobs or actually you could be put into volunteering roles. Have you seen any increase due to job centres or whatever encouraging youngsters or otherwise into these volunteer roles as part of the process of getting back into work?
Thanks, Chair. Certainly, I've not got the statistics available today, but one thing has been very apparent is that in terms of individuals wanting to volunteer to enable them to perhaps to put in stronger job applications or be able to say at interview that they've got work experience done on a voluntary basis as opposed to necessarily paid employment, that is certainly something that's become more apparent across the region. Working in partnership with our colleagues in economic development, the employability programme is very much based about that, where you've got somebody that's perhaps long-term unemployed. They recognise how important it is to demonstrate what they've done during the time that they've been unemployed. So that has certainly boosted volunteering across a whole range of different disciplines. We do capture the reason, the sort of motivation of individuals why they want to volunteer. So that is something, if Councillor Carson's interested, I can certainly get that raw data.
Just to follow up on what Councillor Carson said about the tendencies, I know, especially in the Stewart and complaints in the Beat area, parents are now having to pay the whole, is it month or 2 month, 3 month block up in advance where it used to be a weekly basis. And there's 2 or 3 of them quite up in arms about that.
I'll take that up, sir, and speak to Councillor Stitt.
It was actually still the last thing on page 13. It was just very quickly, Chair. The number of attendees at physical activities in D&G, does that include active schools?
Yes.
So we'll need to make sure there are no double counted in education returns. Yep, thank you.
Okay, page 14, and then page 14.
Yeah, and I note that it's a success in terms of development of synthetic grass pitches across Dumfries and Galloway, where the progress has been 100%. I take it we've not given up on that. There are other areas that require the same facility, and that we continue with this to try and further develop the synthetic pitches. We're on to, I think, 5G now. I think the terminology is, and always to be developing, looking for sources of funding that could provide this, as indeed we did with the first 3G pitches, that would want to see this rolled out across Dumfries and Galloway as practical and as much as possible.
We continue to work with Sport Scotland in that area, sir, and obviously this committee will be asked to approve its capital programme in due course. So it'll be part of the capital programme. It'd be for members to prioritise.
Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at CCSO 3B, SPI, 11BI. Number of visits to usually the council's funded or part-funded museums that were in person per 1,000 population. Now, obviously, over the next 4 years, there's the commemoration projects that are actually going on across Dumfries and Galloway. And I see there's an exception report in for this particular one, which doesn't mention the commemoration report. So we need to take that into consideration, what's actually going to be happening over the next, certainly next 2 or 3 years, to ensure that we have the right key performance indicators on that.
Absolutely, sir. What we're trying to do is improve it at the moment, and any additional, there will be add-on as a result of the First World War commemorations. And the library, the museum service will be looking very closely at that and making sure that we have appropriate displays in place.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It was just on the back of that, just the predictive nature of setting the targets for attendances, for example. So, I mean, in the exception report for that very same item, it seems that we're sort of surprised that Easter happens to fall in March, and that's affected the figure somehow. I mean, is there any way we can look ahead to next year's calendar and sort of gauge what's upcoming before we set the sort of figure for the year, and then we won't be surprised that Easter is in April or March, for example.
Can I assure Councillor Thompson that it's not intended to say we were surprised that Easter fell in March. It's a fact it fell in March, and the weather wasn't particularly good, so we didn't get the visitors. If it had been in April, or as normal, we might have had more visitors. It's the weather that affects it as well. So the fact it was in March was well known in advance. The problem was the weather.
If you want to sort the problem Easter, take up with the churches, Stephen. Thank you, David Council.
Two parts to this one, Chair, and it's the one at the top. Community Council satisfied with the support being given. I'm not suggesting that there has not been support given, but I don't know if it's particular to the West, but we've got community councils that are either not reconstituted or indeed their numbers are falling off, and whether we can be doing a lot more to support and offer admin support or some other means so that the communities are represented. It's from Dromore to right across the spectrum in the Wigtown area. That numbers are dropping off, and we're seeing community councils falling and fading away. Just to see if there's anything we can do in that one. And again, it's to the percentage of members' inquiries dealt with through the elected members' inquiry services with agreed timescales. And there's two parts to this. There's the first part where 7 out of 10 almost is only being achieved. And then the next part, it's 8 out of 10. I have asked for reports in the past to come forward in terms of the time scales only take you up to 15 days, and then there is no measurement thereafter. I was assured that there would be a report June or July time.
Can you say that one? We're coming on to that one in item 6 on the agenda. So can you answer the first part, Mr. Hunt?
Certainly in terms of community councils, sir, we do encourage community councils, and we have worked hard with a number of existing community councils. It is disappointing that there are not more community councils established. One of the biggest disappointments was we endeavoured to establish one in Stranraer and got not enough people prepared to stand for election to actually have a community council. The staff within CLD do try to work with the communities, and anybody who says I would like to establish a community council is welcomed with open arms, and we do everything we can to help them. But I will look at that again with Harry and see if there's anything more we can do.
Just to say, actually, I think probably well done in this one. There have been the issue about domestic noise is quicker than we have a target for. It's been good, and people clearly basically feel safe. So I think that's been a success, and I think we should say so.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the last item there to do with the support of development of CCTV systems, I noticed that's sort of finished 100% there. So I was just wondering if there's any more information on how the CCTV systems are actually currently being put in place or developed. Thanks.
Insofar as I am aware, the CCTV systems which are in place are actively working. Communities do feel safer because the CCTV is there. It would be a very brave man that said it was a perfect system. I think you can always improve on a system. We are looking at further developments in terms of CCTV, and we'll come back to members with that. There's a major piece of work being undertaken by Ailsa Freeman and her team to look at this. But we'll come back to members on community safety issues in due course.
Yeah, Chair, just to give a balance to that last remark, not the last remark by Mr. Hutt, but the remark made in terms of noise, domestic noise, well, there's a figure of 283. It's the ones where the noise is not abated or continues, and the length of time that noise continues. Indeed, antisocial behaviour is currently under review, and noise nuisance is very much being looked at. And I think for this department, CCS, then we've got to look at our responsibility and our statutory powers in terms of how we measure noise with the proper equipment. My understanding is that it's very much the equipment we've got is commercial, used in commercial properties, and perhaps not within a household. And in that respect, Chair, I think we need to be sharpening up on this particular issue. Notwithstanding what's being reported here, this could be someone just plain loud, and being asked to turn it down. But where noise continues, it does cause problems in the communities, and it's one that we are not doing as well as we should be.
Councillor Scobie and I have an ongoing dialogue about this particular issue. There are issues in relation to domestic noise which we need to look at, and I know that Councillor Scobie had a meeting recently with members of my staff and the police about antisocial behaviour. We will be coming back to members with a report on antisocial behaviour and how noise nuisance complaints are dealt with.
Thank you very much.
Just to draw attention to the percentage of residents feeling safe in local neighbourhoods is at 98.2%. We should maybe bear that figure in mind when we discuss one of the items coming up further in the agenda.
Thanks, Chair. It's the bit about the only red bit on the whole, or sorry, one of the two red bits on the page. The top one about customers 60 plus involved in CCS activities. And I noticed there's a lot of information here about the libraries and stuff like that. I'm more interested in the number of 60 pluses who are actually using our council leisure facilities for activities, as opposed to going and getting a book to read. Is there a way we can actually incorporate that, or so we can actually measure and bring it back as a separate? I'm kind of looking at Harry here through you, Mr. Haswell, but.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, certainly the way these joint KPIs are collated is that all the component parts of CCS, so leisure and sport, arts, museums, libraries, CLD, all put forward their contribution, and that is the top line that members see in front of them today. So we can certainly provide that detailed breakdown if that's what members are interested in.
Thanks, Chair. Just the same KPI, actually. I mean, there's a lot of projects going on with putting you first for age 60 plus, and I'm just wondering if there's any information that's actually within the CCS side of things, because you get a lot of joint working between CLD and putting you first. Is that counted in the figures?
No, sir, that relates to the CCS facilities. We do work closely with Putting You First and various other organisations. I'm not sure how that information is collated, but I'll come back to you.
If that is the case, then Chair, perhaps we need to look at this KPI and see, because I mean there is a lot of work going on out there, proactive work by Putting You First and CCS, and we need to look at that particular KPI to see if there's a joint thing that the Joint Health Social Care Board will look at.
Exception reports, I don't know if there's any more queries in exception reports. I think we've covered most of the areas there. Move on to the recommendations. Sorry, Finlay.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question. When we had the workshops, it was we're looking at page 19 on the number of staff who have achieved the customer service professional accreditation. There was an indication that maybe some of the staff were unwilling to undertake this training. Is that taken into consideration in the exception report, that you may have some staff that don't want to move forward and undertake this?
Not at the moment, sir, but we will find out at the end of the period who doesn't want to do it. I'm not aware of any member of staff. We can't force staff to train. What we can do is we can say to them, this is a personal development. It will enable you to move up the ladder, perhaps. In terms of integration, we have actually asked the staff who are integrated are trained up on the 3 areas that we deal with, or the 4 areas that we deal with in the integrated services. There have been no staff indicated that they wouldn't want to be trained. They've all come forward and been trained. In fact, one of the complaints I've got is that they're not being trained quick enough.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. It's page 26, improvement action, talking about limited resources to deal with EMES in one department, meant that timescales for responses to inquiries were not always achieved. The department has now addressed the issue by putting in resources at area level, and this has resulted in the ability to meet the agreed timescales. 2 questions, if I may, sir. First one, which department are we talking about? And secondly, why was this situation allowed to develop?
Thanks, Chair. The department in question is DG First. The original arrangement was that all DG First inquiries were going to be dealt with within their HQ at Cargan Towers, and it quickly became apparent that the volume of inquiries that were allocated to DG First exceeded their original anticipated levels. What that department have done is they've identified a lead officer in each of the 4 areas who then pick up DG First inquiries at source. So it comes into the area framework office and then it's passed to the local contact within the local DG First. You could argue that perhaps that could have been dealt with quicker. The background is, I think from memory, it was June, July last year that trend was highlighted, and the corrective action was put in place by August 2013. This is obviously the retrospective position. Members will see, hopefully, that when they consider the EMES specific report later on in the agenda, that further improvement actions also has been put in place.
Now, we're coming to the EMS report. I should have said that there. We're coming on to the EMES report. We don't need to labour the thing.
Page 32, Chair. On welfare reform policy development, and this one is here before us in terms of credit union development, practitioners information hub launch on November 13th, but it's to the additional discretion housing payment allocation from Scottish Government, and in respect to that we are meeting all our targets in terms of everyone receiving who's been affected and qualify for the discretion housing payment. We have made that, and indeed that we have revised our method of application, and that it's straightforward. Anyone who got it last year would get it this year and next year and whenever. So it's on the discretionary housing payments, a reassurance on that one. And also in the improvement action plan, while it's recognised that the universal credit has slowed down, I would hope it could have been, by the time it slows down, it'll be repealed under welfare reforms, but it's this one that it's been requested to remove from the CCS committee in terms of its business plan. What does that actually mean in terms of removing it? Are we still going to protect people who seriously affected by the welfare reforms, either through the bedroom tax or universal credit, once it is rolled out?
Yeah, I've got it. Okay, sorry, thanks, Chair. First of all, in terms of the position on discretionary housing payments, just to provide members some reassurance that the Welfare Reform Subcommittee agreed the process for assessment for 2014-15 to be exactly the same as 13-14, which means that we maximise the use of DHP. There is no financial assessments being carried on. Anyone who's impacted by the social sector size criteria reduction will be entitled to reimbursement in full from DHP awards, and that's for the full financial year. Indications are that we can potentially continue that into 2015-16 as well, but obviously that's subject to review. But absolute assurance that that's happening. The only cases where that wouldn't happen is where a household is effectively refusing to engage. We've taken a very light touch in terms of the requirements to contact, and essentially we'd take a contact over the phone to confirm the payment would be made. It's really only those handful of people who are refusing for whatever reason, to even speak to either ourselves or the RSLs over the phone to confirm payment. In relation to the project and the proposed removal of the project from the business plan, that doesn't mean to say that all the work around welfare reform stops. All it means is essentially it's embedded in the core business now. The DHP assessment process is now part of Revs and Benefits work plan, and all the other work around mitigation that we can deal with is now core business. The specific issue was around the preparation of universal credit, and because of the slowdown and uncertainty about how that will be rolled out, it didn't seem to make sense to feature it as a project for this year when it's completely out with our control about how and when that's going to be rolled out. If there is further clarity and the UK government and DWP advise specifically how that will be implemented locally, then we can look at bringing that back in as a project. But at the minute, it's kind of meaningless because it's a project that we can't deliver.
Thank you. This actually touches on page 27 to do with the recorded complaints. And we've got an improvement action, but it was really just a question on how complaints are being tracked using our existing systems. Now, I'm really asking this in light of, I suppose, the wider customer strategy. So you'll see at the top of page 29, we're working on behalf of the Council to develop new, innovative and consistent ways which the public can access and engage with the Council. And it touches there on web, phone and face-to-face. But really, in a sense, we're also, I would imagine, on the flip side of that, the Council would be having consistent ways of actually dealing with all these different methods of inquiry. So I'm sure we'll come on to speak about lagging at some point later, but is this something that could actually be used to assist the recording of complaints as well as just inquiries and or fault reporting within one system rather than having a plethora of IT systems, or is there any more information coming forward on that?
We could record complaints of lagging. I don't think it's necessary. I'm pleased to be able to tell members that there are reports coming forward. In fact, there was a report on complaints went to the Audit and Risk Committee not too long ago. We don't, fortunately, the number of complaints we get, we're quite able to handle within the Corporate Complaints Unit. They're all recorded centrally. So a complaint comes in about any service, it goes to the Corporate Complaints Unit and is dealt with. That ensures that we've got the uniformity across all complaints. The new system, which was reported to members, which come in, is in actual fact specified by the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman. So we're fully compliant with the Ombudsman's requirements in terms of dealing with complaints. I can look at whether we need to put it on another system or not, but at the moment, I think probably Judex Paul could tell you off the top of his head who the complainants are and how we're dealing with them. So it's touchwood manageable without requiring an all singing, all dancing computer system. I don't like saying that to Councillor Thompson, but it's true.
Though, if anything, I would certainly not rush towards buying more systems or computers, rather make the use of what we've got already, because there's many systems available to us already. So it was actually more to do with, obviously this is an exception report because the percentage of recorded complaints haven't been responded to in the timescale. So although I might have the appropriate system in that respect, there's an exception report here. And it's only merit for lack of being sort of meeting the target. So it's really just, again, just touching on that. Have we got any more information on what action we can take to improve that?
We're working with services to improve, sir. The Corporate Complaints Unit can only deal with complaints and take forward information as it gets it. There are areas of the Council where we need to stiffen up what we're doing within services to ensure that complaints are dealt with timeously.
Thanks, Chair, for your indulgence. It's a general statement. There's some actually really good stuff here around what in another department we call integration, but what we call joint working here, and particular things like the telehealthcare pilot that's been working with PYF. And I'm actually wondering if there's a benefit here to make it easier for us to scrutinise this department's input into the wider joint working agenda if we try and club them all together. The one downside I've got here is that the development community area profiles, which are crucial for the integrated or joint working board setting their budgets and their resources, is actually way behind time here. So and it's due to be finished 28th of February 2015, which is about 6 weeks before, by law, we're required to have everything in place. So is there a way we can actually accelerate the development of the area profiles so that the project board who are looking at joint working could actually get the most up-to-date information possible?
Thanks, Chair. In relation to the area profiles, we hope to have a final advanced draft by end of play this week. The reason that we've extended the due date is that we want to gauge the impact of having those area profiles. So it's not down to a delay in having the profiles available, it's simply that we feel, and members will see in the next report, that's a refreshed business plan, that we want to keep it as a project, because once they're implemented, we want to gauge how effective they've been and the feedback that we've got from people that use them. What we hope to do is to work with all 4 area committees over the next couple of months and give them a seminar on their specific area profile. And I'm happy if any individual members got any more questions on them.
Very much. Move to recommendations. We've done 2.1, done 2.2 and 2.3. We have scrutinised the exception reports, and I think we've raised certain issues there that need to be done, and hopefully officers will come back with a report on the action taken. Members happy to accept that? Very much. Move on to item 5, the refreshed business plan. Anything you wish to add to that, Mr. Haswell?
No, Chairman, I'm quite happy to take members' questions. The report links with the previous one. We're required to update the business plan on an annual basis, and this is the updating report. I think we've answered a number of issues which members had, and hopefully the updated report and the information would address those.
Okay, I think we can go to Appendix 1, and there's amendments to the performance targets laid out there. Any questions? Councillor Maitland?
Thank you. I don't know if you want to do it page by page. I've got questions on quite a number of pages.
Page 37, which is the start of Appendix 1. So if there's anything arising out of that. Okay.
Yes, in which case then, yes, please. I think that a number of these objectives and the changes seem to be maybe a tad less ambitious. We look at reducing the targets in the first, in number 2 and number 3 there. I think just ask about need to change the target from 70 to 40. This is in terms of the number of service activities available. I just wonder why we're going that way. If there's a sort of sense of being slightly less ambitious rather than being more ambitious.
Harry?
Thanks, Chair. Just to pick up on Councillor Maitland's point about CRM, one thing we've found, for example, is that when you've got no services scripted through CRM, it's a lot easier to get to your first 50. Once you get 50, just simply due to the range of services that are left and the fact that it takes quite a lengthy period of time in some instances to get it on, that's the main reason why the target has been reduced. It's easier to get scripted services through CRM year 1, and it becomes more difficult as time moves on.
Councillor Maitland?
And thank you, I understand that now. Thank you. And the one above, there's a recommendation that the target is reduced to reflect these areas of consideration. This is with respect to front-facing staff who've achieved the service professional accredited training.
Thanks, Chair. We've got 322 staff at the latest count that are classed as front line. What we've experienced in the last financial year is that depending on how ambitious or motivated the member of staff is, it can take up to 6 to 9 months for them to complete the full programme. I think that the fact that the principal officer that is leading on this project was recognised nationally in terms of being Customer Service Excellent Champion of the year last year hopefully reassures members that it is something that we're wanting to focus on. And I think perhaps the initial target was slightly ambitious simply due to the length of time it takes to take an individual member of staff through it, the mentoring requirements that you've got. Every member of staff that does it has got to have an allocated mentor, and also the other training requirements that staff need to deal with. So it's certainly that we're not wanting to keep the target ambitious. It's just that we want to try and keep it balanced with it being realistic as well.
And there's one more factual question. Did I understand when somebody said we can't force staff to train? Can I actually just nail that one? Because that seems to me extraordinary.
We actively offer training to staff. We do personal development plans. As part of the personal development plan, we will identify areas where they would benefit from training. Vast majority of staff will grasp that with both hands. If an individual member of staff doesn't attend a training course, that becomes management action being required, and it's very difficult to force someone to go and do something that they don't want to do.
Because obviously, as part of the role description, there'll be training requirements for health and safety and all that sort of, and they have to do that as part of the role description. But anything for a personal development, it's up to the individual if they want to have a personal development plan.
Okay, Finlay?
Just on the same point, again, we discussed this briefly at the workshop. I think it's almost, it needs to be part of the job description that they do go through this qualification. I know it's difficult to go back and change employee contracts, whatever, but is there any ambition in the future that any new workers coming into this section that will actually, excuse me, who will be forward-facing, customer-facing, there's a requirement that they actually do go through this training? Because I know health and safety is a statutory requirement, but surely we want all the customer-facing staff to have this training. So, you know, if you're taking on new staff, it is a requirement of their contract that they do undertake it. Because the last thing we want is people in the department that don't want to undertake training to help them do their job better. And I realise it's difficult to force it, but at the point of employment, surely that could be a condition on their contract.
In terms of the integration, it is, sir. We pay staff in integrated facilities more than we paid the staff previously. The point is that anyone who applies for a job within the integrated service will require to have the accreditation. The difficulty is with existing members of staff, you've got to take them along, and you'll see we've got 322 existing members of staff that we're going to have to train and take forward. So they will get the training as they go through. On being interviewed, or when they're asked to look at matching, that's one of the issues that is addressed in the matching process. You will be trained on it. I'm not necessarily talking about the staff who are going to be doing this. There are members of staff who don't want to undertake the training, and some of them retired. We had individual members of staff who undertook voluntary retirement because they didn't want to do the training for the customer service centres. So it is taken account of, sir.
Can somebody explain exactly what this professional or this qualification is? Because I'm looking at the 322 staff, because it must have quite simplistic look at it is you've got a huge number of staff who are frontward facing in other areas other than the ones you've named here. Do they go through the same type of training as well, or should they be? I would suggest that there's quite a fair number of complaints will come in because of staffing issues in places like the Ryan Centre, DG1 and things like that?
Thanks, Chair. The Customer Service Professional is a nationally recognised SVQ equivalent award, and I think if you look at the training, the customer service specific training that the Council offered perhaps 2.5 years ago, this has moved things forward significantly. It used to be that if you were classed as a frontline member of staff, i.e. dealing with the public face-to-face on a regular basis, that you would perhaps do a one-day course. This takes it on to a whole different level in terms of it being an SVQ. I think it's an SVQ 3 equivalent. And whilst the information that members have in front of them on page 37 is in relation to CCS, the Customer Service Professional qualification has been rolled out across the whole Council. And we're working with senior management teams in each department to identify the number of staff that they've got that they feel would benefit from this programme. So there's always been customer service training provided, but what we recognised is that we want to take it to a totally different level, which I believe this does. And I think it's far more advanced, far more detailed, hence why it takes longer to do. I think I wouldn't want to overemphasise the fact too much that some staff don't want to do it. Perhaps different staff work at different levels, and if you've got a member of staff that is perhaps slightly more motivated and are prepared to do it perhaps more in evenings and weekends, by the very nature of taking that approach, they get through it a lot quicker than perhaps somebody that doesn't spend so much of their own time doing it. And I think generally it's got to be said that staff do recognise the value of it. If they've got aspirations for career development, either in with or out with the Council, because this is a formally recognised national qualification, it does give them something that they can demonstrate their commitment to customer service excellence. A lot of the private sector organisations that are well known for customer care use this qualification as well, so it's not unique to Dumfries and Galloway.
Could I just come back on that? Yeah, Chair.
If you can be quick about it, Councillor Ferguson.
Well, we'll take as long as it takes to ask the question, Chair, with all due respect. So are you actually saying, Harry, that we've still got the lower level customer care qualification running for, and this is almost like a supervisory role or a more progress role employee? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Sir, just to reassure Councillor Ferguson, we train the staff to look after the customer. This is a professional qualification which not only improves the service, but it improves the member of staff professionally. It's definitely something that we encourage staff to do. We allow them to take time off work to go and attend any modules and things like that. So be assured that we don't just say to a member of staff, right, you're not a customer services person, get on with it. They get training in-house, but this is an add-on qualification.
Thanks very much, Chair, again. It's just on the same sort of related point. Obviously, as we've been told, the vast majority of staff do want to take advantage of the opportunities of training provided by the Council. We've managed 13% of the staff so far on this one. Is there a backlog of people actually trying to take advantage of this? Sort of majority of staff trying to get onto this training. It's just that we're given the time it takes to actually go through the qualification, and maybe the pressures that puts on existing staff. Is that where we're maybe doing an extra resource, for example?
Thanks, Chair. What we've looked at is, of those 322 staff across CCS, we have now got a revised programme that will look at developing those staff through this financial year into next financial year. And I think from a resourcing point of view, I think we have allocated an appropriate amount of resources to it. It's just dependent on so many different factors, such as the member of staff's motivation, the ease of identifying a mentor for a member of staff. And I think the feedback we've had on a national basis from the governing body that administers this is it's better to do it in a sustainable way and take the time rather than just ticking boxes. So we would like to reassure members that we are trying to put all the resources we've got to it, and that hopefully at the end of it, what will result is, staff who are qualified and understand the benefit of having that qualification.
Thanks very much indeed, Chairman. It's just a brief observation and hopefully a request for assurance. It's page 42, sir, talking about the Kirkcudbright Charter, including the Kirkcudbright Art Gallery project. I won't read the rubric. As far as I'm concerned, that's an extremely commendable, not to say enlightened, attitude for this council to have adopted. And I presume, sir, that in the interests of equity and consistency, there'll be a similar attitude adopted, for instance, in relation to the village of Glentroll and indeed Stranraer Seafront. I would seek your assurance, sir, that you would be with me in that regard.
I can only say this is a matter for the Policy and Resources Committee, not for this committee. That's where it was agreed, and if you wish to raise it on behalf of your own constituents, take it to the Policy and Resources Committee. Can
I say, Chair, in response, that I fully intend to do so, but I was endeavouring to gauge whether or not you would support me. Thank you.
That will all depend on what you support me on, Mr. Geddes. It's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, you know. Moving on, page 38. Any questions? Councillor Maitland?
This is the issue that Councillor Carson raised with respect to item number 5, Chairman. I have to say that it was borne into me about last year that the statutory contributed 3% in terms of attendances. Now that's from a population that is about 17%. And I think we should have picked that up much earlier as to what was going on there. Either there weren't any facilities, or people are too ancient to take part, or no notice was being taken of our figures. And I have to say that I am concerned about where statutory attendances will be monitored. If it's simply going to be stripped out, I am concerned about this change to the business plan, and I don't understand how we're going to take this one forward. So I wonder if somebody could help me. Who's going to be responsible?
I think I've got a concern there as well, because there's things going on that I was not aware of until they erupted, and I don't think any member of this committee was actually aware until they happened on the ground, because I think we envisaged these things being transferred to education and would continue much as they were. And it would appear that education decided to do their own thing. So I think we had an assurance for Mr. Haswell earlier on that you'll take this one away and we'll get a report back. Can we try and get a report back to the July meeting? Because I think it has caused a fair bit of concern in the Stewart area, particularly amongst parents at the poorer end, shall we say, who have been asked to fork out a great deal of money in the one slice, and education don't seem to be playing ball with them. So can I ask you to take that away and take a look at Mr. Haswell?
Certainly, Chairman. I did not envisage, like members, I didn't envisage any change to what was happening, but I don't know the circumstances on the ground. We'll take it away and come back to members. I will endeavour to come to the July committee.
Just to take into consideration what I said about the commemoration project with regards to the KPI number to visits for museums.
It's the part-funded museums and the council-funded museums. Is there a reason to change, keep going down? Because, I mean, there's an argument to say we're just simply reducing the numbers and reducing the numbers. What's that? What's that really saying? I'm not completely convinced that is an appropriate thing to do without having a real clear reason for doing it. I think it's Gracefield and St John's, isn't it? The two figures that were problematic last year. But why are we just reducing it? I mean, is it because we've discovered we've not been recording properly, so we want to get it right? Or what is the background to that? I don't think that's adequate to explain to us why we're reducing the figure.
We're reducing the figure based on historic evidence as to the number of people who are visiting museums. I mean, I have spoken I've been round a couple of museums and spoken to the people responsible, and they tell me that the numbers are falling off. Historically, they've been falling off for the last 8 years. We could fill the museums, and I did suggest it, and I'll put my neck on the line here. just get every school to send a class a week to the museum for an hour. And I've suggested that, but I don't know if that would work in reality or not. But I'm told that historically the figures of people visiting museums are going down, and despite best endeavours, they continue to go down.
Well, Chairman, I mean, we're providing a service. No, we shouldn't simply be measuring failure as it disintegrates and dwindles to nothing. We should be actually saying to ourselves, well, what could we do? And what can we do within resources? I mean, let's take a positive decision, Chairman, rather than simply saying, oh, well, it's gone down, so let's just reduce the target. Do you see what I mean? I'm sure it'll be within the strategy, but I think we should actually, that's something we should look at as a committee.
We do make best endeavours to encourage people to come in. There are exhibitions on a regular basis. They change the exhibitions on a regular basis. The fact is that people are not going to museums now. That's a fact of life, I'm afraid to say. I will look at this figure as well when we're looking at the sports facility figure, and I'll come back to members with a fuller explanation.
Just the other, I mean, Mr. Haskell said if you could send a classroom a week to a museum, then that would actually sort it out. When you look at curriculum for excellence, for instance, you look at what's happened in the particular area, you look at the history of the area, that type of thing, then perhaps it's a good idea for museums to talk to education departments, see how they can actually improve the education of their children and curriculum for excellence side of things.
Thanks, Chairman. Just picking up on the same point, I think Archie's absolutely right. If there's better engagement there, and Mr. Haswell's actually picked up on that as well, but in regards to the indicator, I think it should be moved to 1400. We've seen it certainly in Arndale and Estill, a local trend, done all sorts of different initiatives to try and involve more people and attract more people. It hasn't been happening. Information technology, we're moving on to super fast broadband across Dumfries and Galloway. We've got to have a high coverage. That's got to have another detrimental effect. You can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, Chairman. I think it's appropriate we do let it go down to 14 and take it from there, that being a base point. We've got 8 years worth of information there.
There's half of me is actually kind of agreeing with what Ian's saying there, but the other half of me through the area committee is where we're encouraging places that we fund to actually become self-sustaining. And one of the reasons that if we're going to allow our facilities to drop, then it's open field day for those that we currently fund to say, well, it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. So we're not going to work as hard to get people to come into our very specialist museum. I'm not wanting to single any out, but there are a number that members in the room will know about that are funded quite heavily by this authority, and they've got dropping numbers. So do we encourage them to drop their numbers as well, and then next year they come back for even more money from area committee?
We're not encouraging anybody to drop the numbers. We're saying let's be realistic about the number of people who are now visiting museums. It's a fact that it's dropping off, and we do undertake initiatives on a regular basis to try and encourage people to come into the museums, but the numbers of people who want to visit a museum are dropping off.
Can I come back in, Chair, very quickly? Yeah, Alec, I'm actually going to agree with what you said earlier, because it's not just up to the museums and like to go and speak to the schools. The schools should be seeking out the museums and seeing what resources are there and actually working together. This isn't about one department approaching another. Both of them should be actually meeting in the middle. And I think some of the members on this committee here who've got libraries, for example, who are attached to schools, have actually got very vibrant libraries. So the good work in there is actually apparent in other areas. Surely God, it can work in this.
Just quickly, just to add on to that, and it's probably more an issue for education committee, but obviously a lot of the trips that the schools organise are actually out with the region, so it's maybe that they need to encourage the schools to actually use the kind of things that are on the doorstep, because it's not only that, it's just the pressure of actually the funds to actually raise to go to maybe Glasgow Science Museum and things like that. But we should maybe start to kind of have closer links between museums, etc., and the schools.
very careful here. We will talk with education. We currently talk with education. I think with respect to the museums in Dumfries and Galloway, and I don't want to offend anybody here, the Glasgow Science Museum is an experience in itself that Curriculum for Excellence would encourage the council to send the kids to it. I think there are issues there. I understand what Councillor Marshall's saying.
Chair, is the point here, if these figures are dropping off in line with national trends, there's very little we could do or should be doing to kick the trends. I think where action needs to be taken is if the numbers are dropping off more rapidly than they are elsewhere, we're obviously not doing something, but it's there's little point fighting against the national trends in something like this.
Chairman, that's the very issues that I'm going to bring back to members. I've already said to Councillor Maitland I'll bring something back in the report that we're doing in leisure and sport anyway about the museum attendances and a comparator across the national scene, just to show members that effectively the attendance at most museums are dropping off. There are exceptions to that rule, but they've had megabucks spent on them.
If we are taking the welfare reform out of the business plan, that we will cover it on page 41 under the delivery of financial strategy and action plan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Happy to emphasise the advice given earlier that all the mitigation measures in relation to welfare reform will be picked up through the financial inclusion strategy and the reporting. And the removal of this particular project is related to the slowdown around the implementation of universal credit, not a rewinding of commitment to make sure that welfare reform is properly addressed through the Council.
40, Chair, are we moving on to 40? 40, Chair, if you don't mind. Where it says a percentage of older people with special housing needs being allocated appropriate accommodation. Could we also include young people in that as well? And that may not sound so stupid. It's the housing interface with GIRFEC and the whole GIRFEC meetings where housing is an issue. And that seems to have dropped off the agenda. I'm sure John knows what I'm talking about. It's the housing options that are made available to GIRFEC meetings, young people and their families.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This particular indicator is aimed at making sure that the specialist housing needed for older people is made available and the rate of take-up. So it's around amenity and specialist housing. It becomes more problematic if you're talking about just the generic client group of young people, because quite often they would just be allocated generic housing. So we could certainly look at reporting on the percentages of young people, say 16 to 24, allocated properties through the CHR and report that way. But it would be slightly different from what we're talking about with this KPI, which is about better use of that specialist stock. But I'm quite happy to take that away, and we'll look at developing something around age bands and the allocation of stock through the CHR in relation to the recognised age bands that we need to report on.
Happy with that, Chair, and it's really reference to GIRFEC and how often housing options are considered. It could be caught in the next page, but I'm happy to come back to that.
Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Maitland.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually a building what Willie's just been dealing with there. We've also got another section of young people who are transitioning out of children's services into adult services and have got very specialist housing needs as well. So how do we account for them, John?
Well, in terms of how we deal with them, we've developed specific arrangements through the development of the Common Allocations Policy. And where previously the Council was criticised for having to force young people, looked after children, down the homelessness route. What we've done with the new allocations policy is to include them as a specific strategic needs group within the policy. So there's a commitment from all the RSLs that for looked after children, where the council has got a continuing statutory duty, that they would not be dealt with as homeless applicants, but dealt with in a more kind of joined up strategic way through a strategic needs group. And what we've established is better links to the Vulnerable Adults Housing Panel that's chaired by Social Work. We've got a Common Housing Register allocations panel that will deal with allocations for people with particular complex needs, and that's all set out in joint protocol arrangements. So we have got much more robust arrangements there. What we've not done is suggest that that level of detail is captured in the business plan, but certainly we're happy to revisit it. This is relatively new. As members will know, the CHR formally launches tomorrow, only went live yesterday, but it's something that we'll look to build on as the process develops and as the intelligence is gathered about how the CHR works, and it's something that we would revisit. I think in terms of setting specific KPIs at this stage in relation to the range of issues that we'll be dealing with through the CHR, it's maybe premature, but it'll be something that we'll pick up through the monitoring arrangements we've got in place.
It's really a sort of an issue of setting these things out. We've got new key performance indicators, and we've got the measure and description, which just tells us, one of them actually even says that on the number of discretionary housing payment applications received monthly, the description, the measure is the number of discretionary housing payment applications received monthly. And then I go into the actual body of the business plan, and I would expect to see either why we're measuring it in that new box, and I don't know whether that hasn't been put in there, but it doesn't have also the links and the reasons why we're measuring it. We have to be able to read back as to why we're doing something. There's no point in measuring something just for the sake of producing a figure, rather like the museums, she said crossly. So I don't have on page 111, Chairman, there is no link, but we ought to have a reason that we can read back as to why we're doing something, and you can't.
Well, thanks, Chair. In relation to the DHP statistic, it was really just to provide assurance to members that we were trying to maximise the take-up of DHP. And Councillor Mayton's correct, it's a very straightforward statistic, but it's a good indicator of potentially either a lack of uptake or changes to the level of demand because of changes in housing stock, because the number of households who will be subject to the social sector size criteria is not static. It changes as people decide to move on to different types of accommodation. So, for instance, the typical example would be if they're under-occupying a property and they're subject to the social sector size criteria, they could either seek a transfer, a mutual exchange, move into a different housing sector, and that bold indicator would be a top-line indicator of whether that's happening and to what extent that's happening. But there's an awful lot of work that sits below that, and that would be the kind of analysis that would be done through the Welfare Reform Subcommittee with the detailed performance reports that we take there. So it's really just giving a kind of broad indicator of what's happening, but there's lots of other information and data that will sit underneath it that will be reported in the kind of bespoke monitoring reports that we take to Welfare Reform Sub, if that assists.
That's absolutely fine. I just think in the business plan here, we should try and make the thing explicit. And I think it would be... I've said it all.
We'll add the links in. They're relatively simple to add in. It's links back to the SOA or back to the council's priorities. We'll just attach those links in.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually about the in-year collection levels of council tax, NDR, sundry debtors payments. Can you tell me, does that sundry debtors, does that include those who've been assessed to contribute towards social care or choosing not to?
If it's a debt, it's a debt, sir. And we collect all debts, or endeavour to collect all debts.
Yeah, well, in that case then, can we actually have it detailed as such? Because I think we inherited 2 years ago a 7-figure debt sum, if I remember correctly.
I'll take that away, sir. I'm not sure I completely understand what Councillor Ferguson means.
It's when someone's been assessed to contribute to their personal care, not at least home care, things like that. And we have a charging policy. It's now been changed to a contribution policy. But those who are assessed to contribute and then just don't pay it. And I know we've got some mechanisms in place, for example, where they can sign over their house and things like that. But there's a significant back debt. And I know that's been reducing through you, amongst others, hard work. Yeah, but we really should be showing that as a figure on an annual basis, because it should be coming down rather than going up, as my suggestion.
When the debt becomes a debt, it's part of the sundry debtors. It refers to council tax, non-domestic rates and sundry debtors. Sundry debtors are people who don't pay their library fine and people who don't do what Councillor Ferguson has alluded to, and anybody else who owes the council a debt. That's what they're termed as, in accountancy terms, as a sundry debtor. So they are included, or will be included in there, sir.
What I'm actually saying, though, can we actually have it highlighted? Because at the end of the day, council tax, non-domestic rates are obligations on people who live in this region, right, defined by statute, as is the contribution. That's my point. No return in the library book. It's a huge difference.
I'm loath to single out a single sundry debtor and include that particular issue in what becomes a sundry debt. In technical terms, once they owe the council money, it is a debt. It doesn't matter where it arises. We are duty bound in terms of the accountancy rules to refer specifically to council tax, non-domestic rates and sundry debtors. I know what Councillor Ferguson's alluding to, and there are issues that we're dealing with through social work services, in particular in relation to these individuals. I would rather not change the council's rules on the hoof here now, if you don't mind.
Just on that point, because I would have concerns in regards to that, because if somebody could be identified, I would have thought that they were the person who owed it, whether it's a small amount or an actual significant amount of money, then therefore, surely when we took them to, if it ever got to the point where it went to the court, it would have a real trouble actually pursuing that debt.
Yeah, Chair. Housing option and homeless services, accepting that earlier Girfick will be caught somewhere else. Delighted to hear that. But on this one, could I get an assurance that this includes the refurbishment and redecorating of homeless accommodation? Because what it says here develop an improvement plan to ensure the council is well placed to deliver its statutory duties towards homeless people. That we are bringing our homeless accommodation up to a standard that's included in the improvement plan, because I still believe we are offering homeless accommodation at less than an acceptable standard. And I've raised this in the past and got assured that would all operate from February, and I want to see it in the improvement plan and report back that is indeed included in the KPI, that we are letting homeless accommodation to a standard.
Mr Hazel or John?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there is a report further on the agenda that gives members a kind of update on where we're at with homeless service. Just to reassure Councillor Scobie that the proposed improvement plan relating to housing options and homelessness would include the provision and management of temporary accommodation. That is a statutory duty to provide temporary accommodation for all households assessed as homeless or potentially homeless, and we need to improve the stock that we offer to those clients. So that will be a key element within the plan.
Could I just ask about the monitoring customer service professional rollout? Is that going to be a corporate proposal? It appears here, and we're being told that anybody front-facing. Would we see that in other business plans?
Chair, yeah, absolutely. It's a corporate responsibility that sits with CCS, but all departments have got a requirement to ensure that their front-facing staff undertake this qualification. So it should appear in every business plan, yeah, i.e. what that department's contributing to the overall picture.
Just on the point made earlier, Chairman, I know you said it's going to policy and resources, but there is an issue in here, and it's on the grants that are given to third sector, and then third sector are the signpost to wider funding sources. And it's really to get a handle on this in terms of KPI and reporting, in terms of much the drawdown on some of these figures, and that we are maximising the income to the local areas. I know in the Wigton West, then the council is the place of last resort, and that the organisation should seek external funding. Is to try and get a handle as to what is the value of that external funding to the local economy, and that we are maximising as much as possible the drawdown, and how that does impact on the local economy.
Thanks, Chair. I assume that Councillor Scobie is referring to the bottom of page 42, the online grants system. One of the advantages of taking that type of approach is that, assuming that members approve that direction of travel, is that when an applicant is submitting an application form, part of the ongoing monitoring will be an obligation on the group to say, well, if they've drawn down £3,500 from, say, Wigton Area Committee, they'll need to also provide details of what other external funding sources that £3,500 has attracted as a result of match funding. And where we want to get to is be able to say, as a result of the global 1.2 million that's currently dispersed through area committees, this is what it's pulled into the Dumfries and Galloway economy. So I think using that online system will enable us to get that type of information in a lot more detail, and we certainly intend to go back to the 4 area committees with that proposed approach.
Just to come back on that, Chair, and if you look, the online grant system is to strengthen the community, the strengthen community service review. What I'm saying, I'm not just relating this to what monies is given by area committees. I'm saying that third sector are funded, and it's to see what how they've improved the drawdown and the local economy, what the value of that is overall, not just in third sector, but some of our own departments like CLD in how they assist voluntary organisations to source funding and secure funding for projects, the value of that to the local economy. And I think for a CCS, we should be looking at the global, the holistic view. How much is this to the local economy? Not just online because the council's given money, but that we are drawn down from external funders.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there's a CCS performance report going to each of our 4 area committees next month, and in that narrative it will include the level of external funding, not just the councils receive, but also what it's acted as a catalyst for other groups to successfully apply for as well. So that's hopefully the detail that Councillor Scobie's after.
Thanks again, Chair. This is a sort of general question really about some of the IT projects or improvement projects that are listed there. I suppose it includes the online grant system as well. I noticed some of them, there seems to be a kind of, we've identified we need something to do this job in terms of a quite specific solution to a particular area. And then if you sort of tie that in with page 58 and the actual refresh for the IT capital projects, etc. I suppose what I'm really noticing is that obviously we use various information management systems just now, such as Scuba, Respond, Covalent and Lagan, etc. And I suppose we'd have to be confident that we're actually using them fully. So we have a lot of systems, I believe, that we're maybe not using to the full extent within the council, and I'm sure that's an area of improvement for each department that uses them. But are we actually reactively buying software and developing systems, or it's really just to get a sense of the strategic overview and direction behind it, rather than reacting to a sort of need that emerges then, so that we've got yet another software system. So it was really just to get a wee bit of a better idea on where the strategic driver is in the sort of holistic picture of the council, or a sort of reactive thing where we're going to end up with like 20,000 systems and that. Not that I'm mad for buying new computers and that all the time, as the director alluded to, but it's just a bit more information on that, please.
Could I reassure the member, we in the past, people were guilty of going off and doing their own thing. We've now established firmly a hierarchical method of purchasing IT equipment and software. Nobody can do that without going through the head of IT, or Business Technology Solutions. So the BTS have an overview, strategic overview of what is required. If a department identifies that they need a piece of software, it goes through the asset board and members approve the capital, the IT asset capital programme. It was approved at Policy and Resources Committee, at least the money was approved at Policy and Resources Committee last week before. So basically, the answer to Councillor Thompson is, yes, we have a tight control now on the purchase of not only IT equipment, but also software. These will all have to take their place in the pecking order through the business plan, which Technology Solutions will have. So that assurance, I am able to give that assurance. 2 years ago, I couldn't have given you that assurance, but now I can.
Thank you, that's very encouraging. I think you've just maybe touched on it there in your answer, that IT is the strategic driver, if you like, that identifies where the council's going corporately with its IT systems. But juxtaposed with that, there's also the need-based cases that are getting put forward by departments, which suggests that the strategic vision for the IT department maybe isn't quite tallying with the needs that are being identified by each department. So there's a bit of a gap there, I suppose.
I think the two interrelate, sir. The IT service cannot be expected to know that, for example, the homeless service requires a system. That's for the practitioners to identify and then take through the Business Technology Solutions. They report to the Strategic Asset Board. The Strategic Asset Board will then prioritise the purchase of systems, bring that to members and ask members to authorise the purchases that are necessary. So if the system that Mr Lynch has identified here is essential, then it will find its place in the pecking order. And I, for one, in terms of the homelessness software, will be arguing that it should be top of the house. So that will come back to members in due course, sir. But the two are interrelated. But what Graham McAlorum can do is he can look into a crystal ball and say to John Lynch, you require that particular piece of software. John identifies the requirement for it. It then goes through the appropriate system, is looked at across the Strategic Council, and there is a control of what's purchased. There is no longer any spot purchasing of either equipment or software for IT.
Thanks very much. Well, just on that, I'm just sort of looking at the business, page 58 of 186. So, for example, Scan or George Resourcing, there's obviously an opportunity. I don't know how much sort of work is going on with education in terms of libraries, museums, etc., where they're actually accessing cultural things. So is that a sort of joint bid between the two departments? Obviously, a sort of bid to all joined up about resources. Scuba, obviously, now I've got upgrades required because it doesn't meet the expectations that we need just now. There's maybe an opportunity with the redevelopment of DG1, for example. The improvement in engagement, there's opportunities there for working with other departments out with a CCS to maybe make a joint bid towards something that's going to benefit the wider corporate council. I just wondered if that's been explored. The housing, is that something where housing partners in the region are also involved with as well? Thank you.
If there's an opportunity to join things up and do it across the council, that's why we have the IT people in control at a strategic level. That's why with the asset board, that's why we come back to members with purchases of IT equipment. That's why we've got a programme of purchase of software, etc. If there is a joined upness, yes, we will join it up. If John identifies something which can be used by another service, yes, we will identify that through the control that we have centrally at a strategic level. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question or not.
And finally, the Community and Customer Services Business Plan. Are there any queries in that one? I think we had a fair go at this at the seminar we had. So are there any questions in that members have at the moment? Okay. Can we move to the recommendations? Can we agree the proposed amendments to performance targets as set in Appendix 1 and approve the refreshed Community and Customer Services Plan as set in Appendix 2? Members happy to go with that? Okay.
Chair, we will be coming back to members on the libraries issue and the sport issue. So I would minute that you will get reports back on these two specific issues. So the plan can't be completed until you've got that report back. Is that okay, Chairman?
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said amended. Move on to item 6, and that's the elected members inquiry service. And I think that we had 19 members responding, so I hope some of the 19 who responded are here. And I would say the opportunity to have your input, so I hope you did put your input into this particular thing. I don't want folk asking questions who are, shall we say, that didn't use this to have their queries highlighted. And Mr. Haswell, do you want to add anything to this report?
No, Chairman. We did the survey. We've come back with an improvement plan, which I think hopefully addresses some of the issues that were raised during the survey, and we're happy to take members' questions. I'll take the easy ones, and Harry will take the difficult ones.
The driver up, okay.
You'll be pleased to know that I did take the surveys here, and one of the issues were that when you put a elected member inquiry service concerning issue raised or whatever, sometimes you get a standard response. And that standard response is that the closure of the EMES system going down, because if it is, it's not right. Because what you'll get back is the standard response that this is going to go into lagging, for instance, or this is going to go into another system, and we will make sure that your issue is dealt with. That isn't closing the loop as far as we're concerned. We cannot respond to our customers, the public out there, when we raise that concern. So I just wanted to make sure that standard response isn't the closure of that issue.
Thanks, Chair. No, it's not. It certainly shouldn't be. I think there's been some examples recently where, particularly potholes, for example, have been reported that the standard response that a member of the public would receive also goes out to an elected member via DG First, and that is certainly something that we are wanting to address, that the elected member get a customised response as opposed to one that is standard. What the operational challenge from a DG First perspective is that the volume of reported potholes and the time it would take to customise a response for every single pothole is a little bit problematic. And if you look at the improvement plan, one of the things that is being proposed, I think it's the last item in Appendix 2 on page 137, is this real-time electronic works programme, which I know is something that members have been looking for quite some time. So they'll be able to go in online and actually see what parts of what roads are being programmed to be either totally resurfaced or totally repaired, which would obviously cover a multitude of potholes. So I'm not saying that's the only answer, but it's certainly something that will hopefully move it in the right direction. But it's certainly something that we're working with DG First at the moment on, Councillor Dryburgh, to make sure that the responses members get in any topic is customised to that inquiry.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I would like to reinforce Archie's comments. I have been in correspondence and contact with Mr Hay recently over certain specific issues, and the response, standard response that one gets, or elected members get in these circumstances, is less than helpful. And that's not really what I'm thinking, but bearing in mind the meeting's being recorded, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks again. It's actually just about area of focus 13 on the online programme, well, works reporting tool, and although it's of value and it's very useful, I'm not really sure what it's got to do with EMES as a system. That's obviously something that underpins some of the work, but it's actually with this committee's well, so I just wanted to actually report.
Thanks, Chair. It was simply to add to, I suppose, the overall picture that in terms of information that's available to elected members. It is anticipated that once this system is fully operational, and if members choose to use it, they'll be able to go in and actually see firsthand what's happening in terms of their roads network, and when the level of investment, the timing of that, when it hopes to be completed, etc. And it's really to complement the EMES system. So it may well be that on using the interactive road maintenance system, they've maybe got more detailed questions that could then be submitted through EMES. Councillor Thompson's right, it's not as a result of EMES, it's simply a complementary service that's going to be coming online fairly soon.
Thank you. Just on the back of that, similarly, one thing that'd be nice to see would be if you could, similarly, you can track the progress of that online with the works to roads, etc. It'd be good if you could actually log in similarly to EMS and track the progress of all your tickets, rather than have a plethora of emails, and you could easily check and update what we're outstanding and what have you at a sort of portal, rather than sort of go through your emails rather than manually sometimes. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. One of the improvements that is recommended for this financial year in Appendix 2 is that, and in fact it was one of the questions that the survey asked elected members, is a customised monthly report that would do exactly what Councillor Thompson outlined. So an elected member, if they wanted to get it, would almost get a monthly statement to say, in the previous month you've submitted 42 inquiries and here's the status of each. We're not quite at the stage where that can be interactive, i.e. an elected member can go in and do that self-service, but that's certainly something we want to look at as we move forward. So at the moment it would be anticipated you would basically get a file emailed on a monthly basis, if you so wished and subscribed to it, that would give you the status of every inquiry in one place, so you wouldn't have to look at a multitude of emails to find that. It would all be in one document.
Take Councillor Carruthers, then Councillor Maitland, then Councillor...
Thanks, Chairman. How much does this system cost the council?
EMES doesn't cost the council anything because it uses the lagging software, which is a system that the council already uses for a whole multitude of other things. The number of services that are captured through CRM, the earlier KPI, that's exactly the CRM system we use is lagging. And what we've done is simply put the elected member inquiry service through the lagging system. It's basically handling information. So other than the staff time, it doesn't cost the council any more to have EMES. In fact, you could probably argue that if EMES was used effectively, it would save the council money because you would be very clear about the status of every inquiry, the officer that's been allocated it, and what the status of that inquiry is.
I can't begin to tell you how excited I feel about an interactive road maintenance system. I shall really, really look forward to that. I cannot tell you how excited that is. I really can't wait. I just want to say, Chairman, I really welcome the new rating feature. I think that's a really good idea. I think that we will be able to say, that we don't think it's very good and we don't think it's very good now. I think that's really a useful button to press. I presume that's how it'll work. I shall be using it.
Yeah, Chair, I think what is helpful as well is the table on page 123 that highlights that, and if EMES means anything, it's that we can monitor where we're at poor performance, and some of these figures in any quarter you look at here is down to 50%. That's 5 out of 10 people that may have made an inquiry through an elected member that is not receiving a satisfactory answer within 3 or 15 days. And that is totally unacceptable. That's 5 out of 10, 50 out of 100, 500 out of 1,000. It's totally unacceptable when you multiply and upward that figure. And then we can see the departments that are not performing as well as others going down to 68.85%. And it's the improvement plan to that, where we should be striking as members, not 85% as the target, but 100% of the target within 15 days. You go beyond the 15 days, and I've made the point I don't know how many times, in terms of that there is no measure beyond that. Now, it could be argued that there is no need for a measurement beyond 15 days. We should be getting it right within the 15 days. But there is no real how do we get the departments to improve on the service delivery when they're falling to as low as 68.85, 69 in social work, where someone could be at risk. And it's the time scale associated with that as an elected member I am looking for, that this should be resolved within X time. Should it be so complicated or complex an issue that there is a timeline attached to this? It's that improvement that I don't see in the improvement plan. Who deals with it on department basis if they are not performing, and reaching the target of 85%? What's the measure there?
Thanks, Chair. I think we've recognised that there may well be legitimate occasions where there's a difference between getting a response within 3 or 15 working days and the total matter being resolved, and sometimes there is a very legitimate reason that you may get what's referred to as a holding response, but the matter that was originally reported simply physically cannot be resolved within the 15 days, and I think that's got to be recognised. On page 132, improvement activity 4, what we've endeavoured to do is that in examples of that, the lead officer who's been allocated the inquiry needs to be very clear with the elected member, either by picking up the phone or meeting with them, to say, look, beyond the 15 days, this is what I'm proposing to do to take that matter forward, and put that commitment firmly in black and white so the elected members quite clear about what's going to happen by when. I think I've had a discussion with a number of elected members on a similar basis, and the example that was discussed was a bridge over a road that on a number of occasions got hit by high vehicles. It's not going to be possible to replace the bridge within 15 working days, but what is reasonable for the member to expect is that there'll be clear what's going to happen to resolve that bridge within the 15 days. Now that might be a 12, 24 month programme of activity, but what the officer needs to do is to make sure that the elected member is very, very clear about what's going to happen and by when. And that's the very reason it's included in the improvement plan. In terms of what happens if a service or if an officer habitually doesn't respond within reasonable timescales, again in the improvement plan we've outlined that we're intending to produce monthly performance reports for every directorate, and if directors so wish, you'll be able to break down what officer within their directorate takes good, bad or indifferent performance, and then that comes down to good performance management and good staff management, because certainly if it was one of my staff that were continually not providing the level of service that I expect them to provide members, I'd be picking that up as part of my monthly one-to-ones with them. So I'm not saying EMES solves all the problems, certainly it doesn't, but what it does do is give you black and white performance information to enable you to then go and help manage the issues.
Yeah, we've been referred to page 132 in the improvement plan, and it's there, as rightly said. It doesn't close, it goes on beyond the 15 days. But it says, starting at, in instances of this type, the lead officer will be required to make contact with the elected member. So if it goes beyond 15 days, what's the procedure in terms of that? Lead officer, do we assume a lead officer, or is there a mechanism in place that then somebody that we know that, or it's known that there'll not be a reply within that 15 days, that lead officer will contact us with a substantive reply to say you can expect, and with a timeline. Is that for the elected member to change, or will it be a system that there will be then a recognised lead officer that will contact the member?
Thanks, Chair. The responsibility lies with the lead officer. So if an elected member submits an inquiry, it's allocated to a service who then allocates it to the lead officer, i.e. the most appropriate officer to take that matter forward and take responsibility for it. There would be an initial response that would go out to say that this is what the current situation is. That would be received either within the 3 or the 15 days. And then contact would be made with the elected member, if appropriate, to say, look, the bridge project you're referring to is going to take 18 months. What I will commit to, and then put it in writing, is that within 2 months you're going to get an update, a status report of where we are with that. We're anticipating to put a funding application into Transport Scotland. You'll be kept posted on the outcome of that. And that ongoing dialogue beyond 15 days would be customised to that particular inquiry. And it's then up to the officer to ensure they stick by that commitment. And that's what the lagging software will enable them to do, because it will give them a prompt to say, you've already committed to respond back to Councillor Scobie by the 30th of August. Do you realise you've now basically got 7 days to get that sorted? And that helps, it provides the officer with a tool to enable them to get back to the elected member. In the customised report that the elected member gets, that will be one of the categories that would be included in the monthly report, so they'd be able to see that such and such officer within such and such service has committed to that ongoing dialogue.
I await with interest, Chair.
Councillor Carson and Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, thank you, Chair. The Community Council Inquiry Service, I presume it's still built on the same platform as EMES. What I would like to see in the future is the same sort of reporting as the members would get on a monthly basis, because I've found that 1 or 2 community councils I'm going to, they have queries about not getting responses or not the response they would like, and it would be good to go forearmed with some of that information. And if it's all on the same platform, there shouldn't really be any reason why we couldn't get the information.
Chair, yeah, it uses lagging software, exactly the same principles, and again, there's no reason why a monthly print-off for all ward members that covers their respective community councils. That's certainly possible.
Thanks, Chairman. I mean, Harry's saying all the right things for me. I'm hearing certainly what I want to hear, but what I haven't got is the actual framework and clear understanding how it will come forward. We've got an improvement action plan, which I agree with. What I'd like today is to add, when we get to recommendations of 2.5, that asks for a report back, gives us a clear framework of the processes, how it's structured, how it works, and before that's done, that Harry or whoever, the appropriate person, comes around each political group to get a clear understanding of what the actual elected members on the council are feeling in regards to this. I think there's potential, real potential in regards to making this a really good process. I would take it forward. But I'm not clear at all. It's no free. This isn't free. This is, if we were to take money off somebody every time they're dealing with an issue here, then it would quite clearly say it's no free. This is not a free service. There's cost implications. I think we need to understand how much it's costing the council, and if it needs further resourcing, that's what it needs. We need to have different options to what level of service we require as elected members. So important for us to be able to fulfil our duties as elected members. It really is, and that's why I'd ask for a full report coming back with a framework outlining exactly how this works and how through the consultation with each political member through their groupings or whatever it takes.
Happy to commit to go around the political groups. I think that's a good idea. Can I reassure members the idea of EMES? EMES is a system. It's only as good as the people that operate it. What we're setting in here is more controls over the people that operate it. It does not cost the council to run it. We had the lagging software. The software's there. The individuals who deal with it, you could say they cost money, but if we didn't have EMES, you as individual members could go to 4 or 5 different people before you actually get a response. So you'd be in a situation where time would be taken anyway. These inquiries would come into the council whether or not with EMES. They would have to be dealt with by officers anyway. All we're doing is giving you a single point of contact and ensuring that we are as efficient in responding as we possibly can be. So can I say, this should be a saving, because it should mean that an officer who knows nothing about something doesn't get a phone call that they don't need to get, and then rush about trying to find somebody else. You go into the single point of contact, the people at the single point of contact know exactly where to go to get your inquiry answered. So there's no going round the houses and all 5 or 6 different pairs of hands involved before it eventually gets to a destination. So I think it is intended to save money. It is definitely intended to save money. Could I suggest, so that we go around political groups in the first instance, and if members still have concerns about it, the framework, as far as I can see, we've got the key dates in here. We're saying when we will do these things, and a lot of them are to be implemented with immediate effect. So could we maybe take the MES system round the groups, perhaps before the recess, and we can have a look if we require a further report? Would that be acceptable to members?
Yeah, members happy with that?
Chairman, I would just pick up on
other members with questions as well.
I would pick up on the point, Chairman, just that I think it's important we get a proper framework in place. I know there is a framework in place, and say there was 2 people working on it, and it's coming in rather 3 days, coming in 8 days, takes 10 people to bring it in 3 days, that's what I want to have an understanding of. That could change as it evolves and becomes better. But to bring it back into a satisfactory timeline with the targets that we've got, and that's all member officer protocols, that needs to be, we need to be adhering to that, and we're in breach of them as it stands at the moment.
Members happy to accept that as a recommendation, and also take on board the point made by Councillor Carson vis-à-vis the community councils. Take that on board as well, make sure that's minuted. Okay, move on to item 7.
Yeah. Just looking at the recommendations in 2.2 and 2.4, can we make sure the right paragraphs are in there? The right it's 3.6 and 2.2, and it should be 3.7 and 2.4.
Did they pick that up when they read it?
Okay, members happy to accept that?
Can I come in, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll just be a second, Wally. Can we also ensure that we've got some conversation taking place with our partners in the NHS and the third sectors? Because I can foresee a lot of member inquiries coming in over the next year. Again, I'm harping on about the integration of health social care because it's a major upheaval, and unless the NHS in particular are on board with the EMS thing, has somebody talked to them to make sure they've got the same timelines as us?
That's something we'll look at, Chair, as we build the organisation up. There's a report destined for full council which kickstarts the whole thing, and that's certainly something we'll take on board.
Yeah, Chair, on page 122, just so that we can reiterate and reinforce more than anything, bullet point on the box, key improvements to EMS highlighted by survey. Ensure officers and members are fully aware EMS does not prevent contact and communication between member and officer. Can we reiterate and reinforce that throughout by dictate or whatever, that is the case, and we don't, that you can't speak to an officer of this council.
Accept those recommendations and move on to item 7, which is Resilience Update and Revised National Arrangement report by Director Chief Executive Services. Do you have anything to add, Mr Haswell?
No, sir. The resilience arrangements have changed simply to take account of what's happening with our partners in police and fire and rescue. We now have still got our own arrangements in place. There are national arrangements which involve a regional resilience arrangement. We're working closely with our partner organisations, and we don't envisage any difficulties. We're also recommending that we enter into a memorandum of understanding, which will save an awful lot of paperwork at a later stage.
Any questions on this particular item?
Yeah, Chair. In resilience update and revised national arrangements, could we maybe have local arrangements as well, only this weekend? And it's hard to believe, but I visited a flooding in three to the external of 3 properties. The point I'm making here is that there's protocol relating back to, everybody still believes it's the council, so we need it with our partner organisations that these protocols are in place. I refer to SEPA in this instance, where the organisation give a reply to a member of the public. Well, there's nothing we can do with the flooding, and the flooding happened to be contaminated. And only when I was contacted and was able to speak to somebody in environmental health, did we then interject and get the thing moving. If there's resilience and national arrangements, then our partners have got to know about it and not just walk away saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it, when people are left out there stranded. In this case, the sun's burst in the sky, and this was a flooding caused by outflow from a factory.
Thanks, Chair. I would just probably like to say that the revised national arrangements are very much with regards to major incidents and the declaration of major incidents, rather than an incident like that, which, whilst it would be very worrying for the properties affected, would probably come under normal operational arrangements for these organisations. But I take your point on board, and it's something that I can liaise with SEPA colleagues to highlight concerns through my channels.
Members happy to accept the recommendations? Sorry, Councillor Gaddy.
Yeah, no problem, sir.
Thanks very much. Can we move on to item 8, no cold calling zones, report by Director Planning, Housing, Environmental Services. Anything to add to the report?
No, nothing to add, thank you.
Have any questions on this report? Councillor Carson.
Just regard to 3.8, it says that over the past 7 years, beg your pardon, over the last 2 years there were 7 pilot no cold calling zones. It doesn't state where they actually were. And also in 3.12, it's suggesting that it should be rolled out properly rather than just by, if I've got the right, I don't think I've got the right paragraph. it's 3.9. The selection of, the method of selection presents a risk of becoming ad hoc and sporadic rather than strategic and evidence-based. Well, there's no evidence in this report to suggest where these would be, and it doesn't appear that there's any stats collected from the 2 years that the 7 pilot schemes were put in place.
Do you want to respond to that?
The 7 pilot zones are 1 in Stranraer, 3 in Kirkcudbright, 1 in Gatehouse of Fleet, 1 in Dumfries and 1 in Annan. And we felt this method of the community police recommending where they thought they should be was, well, you can see there's a build-up round about Kirkcudbright for no reason other than there was a more proactive approach in that area. Therefore, we thought it would be better to have a more balanced approach from it.
Just wondering why there'd been no information collected over those pilots. Earlier on we had a 98.2% of the population saying they felt safe in their homes and whatever. I wonder why we're rolling this out more. Is it just to address those few people? And from these zones, there's no information to say whether there was an improvement or whether they felt safer or whatever. And we're taking the time to consider a report that may have no significant impact in the communities.
We do a survey at the commencement of each zone and a review 3 months into the zone. I don't have all of the information with me today, but I have the survey results for the zone in Dumfries, if you're interested in the statistics from that. The zone, initially when it was set up, there were 22 of the residents out of 27 surveyed had a problem with cold collars, and 3 months into the zone it was only 3. All of the people within the zone expressed they felt safer within their homes as a result. We have these surveys for all of the zones as well.
I just don't know why they wouldn't be including a report that we're asked to approve this being extended, and why wasn't that included in the report for us to look at?
Apologies, perhaps in hindsight it would have been information that you would have valued. Certainly I can report on the further review of the 7 zones that we intend to do, and I can report in future committee meetings if members desire.
Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Well, unlike Councillor Carson, I'm not going to damn this with faint praise. I think it's a step basically in the right direction. I'm making the point, Chair, I wouldn't suggest for a moment that it's a panacea and it's going to be a cure of all ills. What I would say, of course, so it will have benefits. If you look at paragraph 4.3 of the appendix and the reference to political canvassers, that will give me additional strength, as it were, to show Tories off my property, but never mind. Philip doesn't need to worry. I don't rate him in that category. But seriously, the big issue, as far as I'm concerned, so bearing in mind, as I've already said, it is a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Paragraph 3.14, issue of cost. Yet again, Chair, you and I have discussed this previously. We have service here, a particular service, and we're asking them, to do work without adequate budgetary provision, and that really isn't acceptable. So I would hope that as we're into the budget or via the budgetary process for next year, will ensure that services such as this, which are worthwhile and meaningful, will be adequately resourced. I'll leave it at that for the moment. Grateful to you for your time.
Thanks, Chairman. Very much aligns with Councillor Geddes, picked up on the same points. We're very supportive of 3.14. We should be resourcing this. We did take a step towards it last year, I think, which would certainly help. Political canvassers also picked up on. The other bit was, Finlay's touched it in part, but I would take a different slant at it. It's just how it's under records, which is page 164, and I've wrote in members. Is there any elected member involvement at all? How do we keep informed? It's something I would like to keep a kind of a clear, just to keep in touch with progress, how it's going forward. there's no mention of members there at all. So if there's any way of reporting that back, or even just whatever's the most appropriate lines of communication.
We do intend to take a more proactive approach about communicating where the zones are. Because they've been pilot zones up until now, we haven't communicated very widely, and we could perhaps improve on that. But it would be our aim to put them on both Police Scotland and the Council website so people know where the zones are. And also on there, there'd be information on how people can come forward to have a zone considered.
Chairman, can I help
in as far as elected members, Chairman, I'm not sure who's speaking there, how would elected members be involved? Because it's something when we're going on community councils and different groups, it's something we'd probably promote if that issue was certainly raised.
I think we'll certainly bring a report back in 6 months' time as to how this thing's operating, if that would help members.
Thanks, Chair. I was at COSLA as this council's rep when this was actually brought forward by the Doorstep Crane Partnership and was led that day by officers from Fife. It is a Scotland-wide initiative. I would suggest the fact that it's through COSLA that we have an obligation to support, to take this through. We've already agreed it in different ways. It's a wee bit unfortunate that it's called a no cold calling zones, because really the thrust here is no cold calling, right, to further crime. Is that right? And we shouldn't lose sight of that, because we're still going to get people who are coming around quite legitimately from door to door, right? Although they might be Tories or SNP or Labour or whatever, but they'll be going about their legal business, right? So we need to be really careful here that we didn't isolate those individuals as well. And just a very personal thing, I actually asked my mother about this, in her late 80s. She's no frightened of people coming to the door. She says, I just don't answer the door. Right? What I'm terrified of is people on the telephone. Right? So are we going to combat the cold calling on the telephone? And is a much more, I would suggest, proactive way forward to keep older people in particular safer in their houses.
The trading standards actually have a project being developed on telephone nuisance calls, which is separate to our local policy on doorstep crime and no cold calling zones. But I'm happy to advise members on that in the future as well.
Just come back in quickly, Tom. Yeah, I accept that, and you're right in what you say. But when it was only BT, then we could talk to BT and they could monitor. But now we've got a plethora of people who are delivering phone things, so it's not got quite as simple an answer, I think, as it was in the past. But
well, I'm rather with Councillor Carson on this one. I like some evidence, and I haven't got any evidence here to tell me what what evidence would be needed within the policy. And again, it seems to me this is tacked on to the end of a committee, a series of committee reports. I mean, it's not in our business plan. We just agreed the business plan, and it should have been there as an improvement project. If we really think it's worth doing, that's where it should have been, surely. I would have expected to have seen it as an improvement project, which I didn't. I mean, I might have missed it, but I didn't see it there. So, to be honest, is this a top priority? Would it be something that we would do in preference to something else? And this is what my problem is at the moment. I'm just not clear. I'm speaking as somebody who is obviously a member for the town in which there are three schemes about which I know nothing.
I think at the moment trading standards and environmental health report through the work through PHES, or PES as it's now known. It probably is in PES's business plan somewhere, which doesn't come to this committee. That's an issue that we're addressing through the Standing Orders and Schemes of Delegation Subcommittee. The the idea was that this committee would become the reporting committee for trading standards and environmental health. And I think that will come with time. Whether we transfer entire responsibility over to a community and customer service is a moot point at the moment. I think you would probably find it in the PES business plan at some point. If members are unhappy that they don't have enough statistical information, I'm quite sure that we can produce that statistical information for them. But I'm getting two feelings here, Chairman. One saying, let's steam on with it, and the other saying, let's get more information. So,
I'll take Councillor Geddes and then I'll try and draw this to a close.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's just gone back to Sandro's response to the point that Councillor Ferguson made. I was just talking, in fact, about work being in train to bring in, an issue, a system which would deal with cold telephone calling. Now, inevitably, Chair, that will have and I'm delighted for the record to hear her say that, but that inevitably, sir, will have resource implications. It goes back to the point I made earlier. We're going to have to grasp this nettle. I mean, all these are worthwhile initiatives, but they're going to have to be funded.
Can I suggest, the officer does have the information there, that this information be sent out to members of this committee. It's just unfortunate that this department is not used to making reports to the committee. It's so long ago since they did that, probably lost the expertise. That's no fault in the current officers. They were probably too young the last time a report was ever taken to a council committee. So, so I think in fairness we can't blame the officers for that one. So I think, could members agree that we get this information disseminated to us? And I see nothing wrong with accepting the rest of the recommendations there. Members happy to do so? Anyone want to move against that? Okay. Okay, you want to move against that?
Yes, I want to shelve this just for the time being until we get further information back. Yes. If I have no seconder, I'll have my dissent recorded. That'll be fine.
No, Chair, I think, I don't think there's any doubt that this potentially is a good idea, but we could have lots of good ideas on, the other thing that's not been explored is what's the role of Neighbourhood Watch in this? And, we've got limited resources now, and, I'm not against this in principle, but we've got nothing to back up that it's actually doing the job it should be, and it may be better putting money towards the Neighbourhood Watch. So I'll second Councillor Maitland that we wait until we get further information back.
I can't see anywhere in the recommendations it's actually asking for money.
It's not asking for money, and that's not the issue. What we need is evidence-based as to why we're actually bringing it forward. I want some evidence as to why it's appropriate to bring it forward.
I didn't see any harm in accepting the fact that this has been operating for quite some time in certain parts of the region. Members are asking for information. That can be forwarded to members, because what this report is asking for is to create more zones elsewhere within the region as well, and encourage it. Councillor Martin, you haven't spoken.
No, I was at the launch of the one in Dumfries, and as I say, it is in my ward. And speaking, we've never had any problem. We've not had any problems going around, as Andy was saying, canvassing around the doors for anything like that. But when you speak to any of my constituents that are in the cold calling zone, it has certainly worked in Dumfries. It's been an excellent initiative for them to take. And as I say, if we're talking about money wise, it's just a wee sticker. They stick in their door. It's a community police that more or less do this along with the trading standards. So, as I say, I don't know what it is, but it certainly has been a success in the stretch of road in Dumfries that it has been initiated in.
Thanks, Chair. As I said earlier, we're committed to this through COSLA already. We're not putting any more cash into this at this moment in time. I don't see any reason to discontinue what we're doing until we get figures, but I do agree that we should get figures back as a reporting mechanism. Another figure I would like to get in there was actually just how big is the problem in terms of not Jane, different question. How many people, how many investigations have the police actually, criminal investigations carried out? Because it's a partnership deal, this, it's not a council thing, and we need right across the board stuff. But we continue, I would suggest, and ask for the figures at the first available opportunity. It's as easy as that. Don't need the vote, surely, God.
Councillor Geddes and Councillor Carruthers, then we'll have to get this
Well,
in.
standing, sir, we've already got a motion. I would say with the greatest difference to my colleague that we do need a vote, and I would move as an amendment, in fact, that these two recommendations be adopted, and that in addition we ask for the further report, as it were, in relation to cold telephone calling to be brought to the committee as at the first possible opportunity. Bearing in mind the comments which have been expressed, I'm no doubt that Sandra will take account of that in the structuring and the provision of the report. So I would move as an amendment accordingly, sir.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, we've got a motion amendment.
Members happy to go to the vote. The motion from Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Carson, is in effect to not agree the recommendations on the basis of there being a requirement for more evidence base to support the proposals. The amendment from Councillor Geddes, seconded by Councillor Ferguson, is to the effect of agreeing the recommendations but also including the provision of a further report on telephone cold calling. All members happy to go to the vote. Chairman.
Amendment.
Councillor Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Carson.
Motion.
Councillor Dryborough.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Prentice.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie. Councillor Stitt. Councillor Syme.
Amendment.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield. Confirm the decision of the committee is for the amendment by 13 votes to 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Can move on to item 9, Field and Trust Queen Elizabeth Challenge. This is part of the legacy from the Diamond Jubilee, the London Olympics and Paralympics, and the 20th Commonwealth Games. Council has been asked to nominate areas to be designated as protected spaces as part of the Queen Elizabeth Fields Challenge. Board has nominated 9 potential areas across Dumfries and Galloway, and the list can be found at paragraph 322. Scott Grant says the reasons he chose these 9 sites relates to the fact that council investment in them recently, and they come within the direct control of this committee, and said members can pick other sites if they wish, provided they meet the criteria detailed in paragraph 323. So, members have any questions, Scott's quite happy to answer them. Any questions, Councillor Geddes?
Thanks very much indeed, sir. The first question is what criteria was used to choose these particular locations? And secondly, were community councils consulted as part of this process, Chair? And if not, why not?
Through you, Chair. The criteria set out in 3.2.3, the principal use should be outdoor sport, play and recreation. The sites must have public space access. And the sites should be accessible in terms of location affordability to the local community. In relation to the second point, your second part of the question with regards to community councils, no, they weren't engaged in this exercise. And the reason for that was because Fields in Trust actually only got in touch with Dumfries and Galloway Council very late on in May, and we had to come up with some very quick and snap decisions in terms of what we felt were priorities from a leisure and sport perspective and a CCS perspective in the first instance. However, I've got agreement from the Fields in Trust that should members today wish to add any other significant areas of space or land that they would wish to be protected as part of this scheme, that they could forward them to myself and I could get them lodged, providing it is done so by the 21st of June, which makes it very, very tight.
I'm grateful to you, sir. Just to say briefly that I find it disappointing that we seem to be operating within such a truncated timescale that denies, community councils the opportunity, to comment and participate in what I'm sure would have been an area of interest to them. So I think that should be noted, sir, and we should take that up in our response back to this organisation.
Chair, there is one site that fulfils all the criteria. I wonder if the Chairman would like to consider it. That's King George V.
King George V is going to be the site of the new hub, as far as I'm concerned, so it's no longer a sports ground.
There's one in Stranraer. There's a King George V in Stranraer, Chair.
I've just came to all the heads that are likely to vote for it. Anyway, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair. There's a King George V in Stranraer. I don't know if Councillor Carson was referring to that.
If that keeps Councillor Carson happy, Councillor Scobie, I'm happy to take it on board.
Chair, I'm just wondering, I'm looking at this, the one that's nominated is the Ochrolua playing field and it's what benefits are derived. I know in terms of what's being raised and getting great hilarity in terms of King George V. There is a fund available for parks as King George V, and it's not the park; it's the pillars that are maintained within the park, and the park can change its features. But what's the benefit? Because I'm looking here at Ochrolua playing field in my ward and changing facilities. It's one that's constantly under criticism for the cost of it. The changing facilities at it are poor and to a very low standard. What are the benefits and how do we derive benefit if they do get the title?
The benefits appear to be that the Fields and Trust have, in conjunction with Sport Scotland, identified some ring-fenced funding which gives priority to the sites that are identified under this particular scheme. There is an active places fund that Sport Scotland currently operate between £10,000 and £100,000, and it is assumed that those sites that are identified as part of this scheme would have some sort of additional weighting when it comes to the scoring by the scoring panel at Sport Scotland.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chairman. Just for the sake of being able to come forward, 21st, hasn't it? We've not got a big timeline, and going back to the lack of consultation that Councillor Geddes said earlier. An obvious one to me would be Eastrig's playing field, but that has it would have to come from the bottom up. It would have to come from the community. There's been a transition period over the last few weeks in which they have ownership of that again, or total control over it. So I think it should at least be put forward to them to be given a chance. I don't know how we do that within the short time scale.
So Marshall.
There's got to come in anyways, but obviously there's only 214 targeted sites across the whole of Scotland, so there's a list of ones here, but what we're determined today is council-owned ones, so the councillors submitting their own applications. It's up for other communities to actually decide. I think there's one already that has actually got to put a separate one in, so definitely support of Eastrig's, but it's not owned by the council, so it could be put forward as on the list.
Okay. Scott, do you want to add anything?
No, that's correct.
Any other questions, Stephen?
Thank you. It was just on the ring-fenced funding. I noticed there's two different tiers. There's a 5 to 10,000 and there's a 10 to 100,000. I suppose it's really just seeking a reassurance that we're not making any assumptions that might not be, that they might need a bit more information, just to double check that one set of funding is not going to exclude you from the other, or if there's a restriction on one, or how confident can we be, or is there any further work to be carried out just to ensure that that's correct as it stands?
Within the various different strands within Sport Scotland funding, it all depends on what the request or the project is. In some instances, whether it's slight drainage works or whether it's additional topsoiling or feeding or levelling off, then it's the lower strand. If we're talking about development of more extensive drainage systems or pavilion upgrades, then that would become part of the Active Places Fund, which is the slightly bigger one. So it really depends on the project, the size of the project and the cost of the project as to which fund it forms part of. Just because they're protected under this scheme doesn't guarantee that Sport Scotland will fund them. However, it does give them a greater chance of success.
And then John.
Thank you, Chair. It's a technical question, I think, probably, but in all the maps that are produced with this, there are very dark lines in some areas. Could you explain to me have these any significance to the thing and what they are?
the maps, when they were originally submitted, were in colour. So unfortunately, the areas that we're talking about should be in colour. So what we did, by luck more than anything else, was to signify the areas of land by putting horizontal lines in the areas that we're talking about. It's not overly clear, but I hope members can see that the horizontal, or the lines that are in each map signifies the areas that we're talking about under the list.
Chair, that's not, I don't think you've just grasped what my question was. If you look at the maps, you'll see that there's some very dark lines in every map. And I'm just wondering what, well, it looks as if they've been emphasised for some reason. And just as a comment, you're better to be lucky than good.
Councillor Stein.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to put forward to Scott. We've got an area in Kirkconnell that the community actually got funding for an up-to-date modern play park. It's a Bowman Edgar Park in Kirkconnell. And I'm not putting this forward just because Sanker's got some, well, anyway, the community put a lot of work into regenerating this area. And I don't know if it fit with the criteria, but there is the sort of scope to put more in that field, because there's still a fair area there that the council own. So I'll maybe talk to Scott later, but I don't know if I think it would be beneficial to the community, even if we just tried to put that forward and see if it fitted with the criteria. Thanks.
Absolutely, quite happy to touch base with you on that one, and we can complete the forms, and then it's over to Fielding Trust as to whether they'll accept it or not.
Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm not trying in the slightest to trivialise what is essentially a serious issue, but I kind of let it pass without comment. Paragraph 3.3.1, sir. There is an assumption that maintenance will be continued in the open spaces in question to allow them to continue to be public facilities. Will that be 3 cuts or a minimum of 3 cuts per annum?
I think that's a question for this committee, unfortunately, but there we go. The member's happy to accept the recommendations within the report. Okay, thanks very much. Move on to item 10, housing options and homelessness service. Vote by Director for Community and Customer Services. John, do you have anything to add to the report?
Nothing specifically, Chair, just by way of introduction. Obviously, members will be aware that the homeless service transferred to CCS just about 6 weeks ago. This is a very first cut initial update on some of the issues that will be tackled over the coming months, if not years, and to give members early sight as to the scale of the challenges that we face. Thanks, Chair.
Any questions for John? Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, this is an important document, and we're moving on to the Common Housing Register, which went live yesterday, and I think John referred to it, that it's launched tomorrow. But, you know, the housing options is a big issue, and I've read through the document in terms of the regulator and housing options in Scotland. I think the most important part is the 3.3 to John's report, where the housing options, the staff have got to be fully trained and supported in dealing with this issue, and it's not just a matter of filling up a homeless application and saying, you know, we've got 28 days to determine. It's looking at the whole housing option issue. And if we turn to page 9 of the document from the regulator, I think it does mention here promoting and improving joint working. And we've had situations where homeless are terminating a person's homeless accommodation, and at the same time social services, social work are putting in an appeal against that, and it's how do we get better working between departments so that we avoid the homelessness situation. So I think that we should be looking at that and seeing how we can improve the particular services in terms of housing options and how we work together better. Similarly, on page 15, Chair. It refers to recognising 3.3 of the report, social landlords performing all aspects of their housing services so that every tenant and other customers has their individual needs recognised, is treated fairly and with respect, and receives fair access to housing and housing services. And in this respect, Chair, if you look at the document on 3.13, and it breaks down the statistics, there is a statistic, in my opinion, that's missing there, and it's how long a person actually sits in homeless accommodation, where they can be into months going into years, and that as an issue in terms of that individual's housing options. And it would be interesting, if it's not a national statistic, for us to reflect the time on, notwithstanding that they have a priority where 56 to about 60% of homeless applicants get priority, but nevertheless we have some that sit an inordinate time and are regarded as time on list in terms of where their places are. Chair. Also in the document, and I've referred to it under 3.8, and it refers to temporary accommodation stock, and if you turn to page 13 again of the document, then you'll see up there housing options and prevention work. Local council perform their duties on homeless so that homeless people get prompt and easy access to help and advice, and provided with suitable, good quality temporary or emergency accommodation when this is needed, and are offered continuous support to help them get to keep the home they are entitled to. And I think that's why it's so crucial in this document that we look at the standard of accommodation we are providing, and I think that there are challenges, as it says in John's report, in terms of how we deliver under 3.8 of his document. And this is where we've got to sharpen the focus in terms of the housing options, that we have staff that are properly trained, not just to look and see whether you fit as a homeless person within the 28 days, but that they fully understand all the housing options, the protocols within the Common Housing Register, where there are special cases that can be considered, and I've referred to earlier, even under GIRFIC, children with special needs that relate back to housing. So I think the document is so crucial that we've got here today, but we need a way of reporting back to community and customer services. We've got the housing sub that interestingly is drawn from what was then the parent committee, being Planning, Housing and Environment, is now transferred to community services. So I just wondered, in terms of the structure and constitution of that, whether that continues. And it's something that I hope this committee will look at. But there are issues in here, Chair, that we need to focus on and move forward. And having spoken to John, it's about training the staff.
Thanks, Chair. Just in response to some of the issues that Councillor Scobie raised, he's quite right. The Scottish Housing Regulator produced their thematic inquiry, and Dumfries and Galloway was one of the 6 case studies. We've had 2 face-to-face meetings with the lead inspectors of that study, and they've given us additional verbal feedback about what they found in Dumfries and Galloway. And I think it's fair to say there's a long way to go yet in even declaring that we've got a housing options service. What I would describe our service as at the minute is an advice and assistance service coupled with the homelessness process, and that's some way short of what's expected in terms of a robust and comprehensive housing options service. We're not unique there, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to improve. At a national level, the regulator has said there's a lack of guidance from the Scottish Government in terms of what's expected of local authorities in delivering housing options, and the Scottish Government have responded positively to this inquiry and said that they would be making it a priority to issue revised guidance probably before the end of the calendar year, and that will help shape how we go forward. But there's a huge amount of work for us to do. In terms of some of the issues that Councillor Scobie highlighted, lack of partnership working and joint working is a key issue. What we need to do is make sure that we have more multi-agency assessments and case conferences in place where we look at homeless households, and we don't look at them purely from the perspective of the homeless officer. We need to get social workers involved, we need to get support providers, and we need to get the RSLs, the prospective landlords, all around the table. That happens sometimes, it doesn't happen consistently enough, so we need to address that. In terms of stays in temporary accommodation, broadly, we do collect statistics on that. Broadly speaking, from the last formal inspection we had, which was in 2008, the average length of stay was about 3 months. It's now up to probably about 9 months. So it's probably trebled over the last 4 or 5 years. And that's through a combination of a reduction in affordable housing, change in patterns of demand, so much more demand for smaller places, one-bed places, particularly for homeless clients, and not enough of them. But also it's about how we manage the homeless client through the process. So there's lots of issues in there. What we'll need to do, and we're committed to doing, is over the next 3 months developing an improvement plan which will pick all these issues out so members are fully aware about how we're going to tackle them.
Councillor Marshall. Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, this report is long overdue, sir. It's welcome, but it's long overdue. I mean, I'm not the only person here today, but, you know, sat in this chamber several years ago and listened to a presentation which was regarded as groundbreaking at that time by representatives of North Ayrshire Council on the back of, housing options at work. And it would seem, disappointingly, since we're not mentioned at any stage in the appendix, that well, the implication would seem to be that nothing particularly positive was found during the visit here as one of the case study areas, and that does disappoint me. But anyway, we are where we are. I would like to think, Chair, that we will in fact, and I'm sure that we will indeed forge on and make progress of the type that we need to make. What I would say, going back to the point that the Councillor Scobie, that Willie has already made, I think we also, as a council, going to have to take this through to its logical conclusion, because while I'm delighted that this service has been transferred and will report to this committee, I think, sir, I personally would like to see the anomalous situation as a consequence addressed, whereby you have a housing subcommittee which comprises of members of PES, or EEI committee to give it its current name, and this is now reporting, as it were, to CCS committee. And I would like to think that this council, either via the Policy and Resources Committee or full council, will ask for a piece of work to be done, in fact, to rectify that, and to make sure, in fact, that the Housing Subcommittee, if need be, it comprises of members of this committee. And that's not meant to be disrespectful to any colleagues who serve on the Housing Subcommittee in the slightest.
Chair, maybe reassure Councillor Geddes that is on the list of my things to do in relation to the subcommittee which is looking at schemes of delegation. What we have to do is amend the scheme of delegation, and that will allow us to take the matter forward. So the point is well made and well taken, sir.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. It's actually the 3.15, the homeless management system. Obviously I touched on this before, just to do with IT systems. Now, I understand this is a tenancy management system, effectively, to sort of bring these things together. But in 3.15, it sort of focuses more on the property management system. So I'm just wondering if there's a wee bit of ambiguity there, because we already have PMIS as a property management system within the council, and Milan, I think it's called. It's used to sort of look at repairs and things like that. Obviously, these are properties that might not necessarily belong to the council, but we have a sort of relationship or lease or arrangement with that. So I'm just sort of thinking, is this actually muddying the water here by talking about a property management system and how the temporary accommodation is management, or are we actually really talking about tenancies? Thank you.
I think, Chairman, just to help, PMIS and Milan are now virtually one and the same system. Obviously, when John makes his recommendations to the IT people about what he requires, not a system, he will say, I require the following. They will then look at PMIS and see if it's capable of handling that. They will then say, we will help you to identify either a system in-house or the correct system for you to use. What has happened in the past is we put the cart before the horse, and people with due respect to them, like myself, with no knowledge, in fact I'm a Luddite, we're going out and authorising the purchase of software and then trying to convert it to our way of working. What we're doing is we're putting the horse before the cart now. John, as the professional housing officer, will say, this is what I need, and they'll identify the best way of delivering it. So when John talks about a property register, he may need a property, we may need a property for the homelessness properties. Don't know, I think you can probably put that in PMIS. We may need a homeless tenancy thing. One thing is certain, we're currently working with spreadsheets and that don't work. What we need to do is look and ask the right questions to get the right answer to put the proper software in.
Thanks, Chairman. Most of what I was wanting to say has been said, but in regards to recommendation 2.4, I wonder if we could get some, in that report, get some kind of indication to where the Housing Committee best sits, and we could maybe refer it from this committee then back to where, if it feel it sits better here, then we could refer it. The other point was strategic housing stroke local housing forum. I wonder if we could have got that established and up and running again, whatever it's got to be called, by October time. Then once we've seen this, and that should be on groupings, selection from groupings rather as a particular committee, then that gives somebody for each political grouping a chance to sit around the table, and that's where I think a lot of these issues will be best discussed as they have been previously.
Sir, there's no need for a recommendation from this committee. It's already on, it features in the work plan of the subcommittee, and the recommendation will be that the political decision making should follow where the service sits. Does that make sense? That's the hint. That will be the recommendation to members of the subcommittee. The subcommittee then will do the piece of work that they've got to do and report to the full council, who then have, there is no delegation in relation to delegated matters. It's the full council that takes those decisions. So the members have my assurance it's currently happening.
Okay, but just regard to the second part, I think John was just about to answer the second part of the question.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, in relation to the local housing forum, now that we are looking to update the latest version of the local housing strategy, the current one runs until 2016. The local housing forum will be critical in informing what we need to do in terms of the strategic priorities for the next strategy. So we'd be certainly looking to kickstart the local housing forum group again, linked to the development of the LHS, much like we did last time.
Thanks. John and I go back long enough to remember Blue Sky and working with. So whatever we do here, there's a plea here, could we actually make sure it talks to other software? Because we're talking here about people rather than accommodation. The accommodation is the vehicle for the people, I would suggest. And I hate banging on about it, but again, this is central to the integration of health social care. Right? Homelessness, and you've got community justice, you've got social work, where I would suggest a lot of your referrals are going to come from, and third sector agencies. So can we actually speak to colleagues in other departments, as we said earlier, to make sure that we're not duplicating something? Or even better, John, if we get something that would actually encompass it all?
Thanks, Chair. Just to expand on the points that Mr. Haswell made earlier, in terms of the IT requirements, Councillor Ferguson referred to Blue Sky, which was the predecessor of Framework I system within social work services. There are some elements of Framework I that are used currently to undertake the assessment process for homelessness, and that's limited in its capacity, and that can't develop in the way that we need it to. So what we're looking to do is essentially get a system that will cover three elements. It's the client-centred assessment process initially, which would deal with whether or not they are homeless, what housing support needs they need. We also needed to capture temporary accommodation information and rent accounting, and also then to link into the Common Housing Register and the referral process. So it's a kind of complex set of elements that we need to be brought together. So it is a property management system, but it is also strongly client focused, and it's around that assessment of housing needs and support needs as well. So it's going to be a bit of work kind of developing that module to where we need it to be.
Yeah, just very quickly, Tom, if you don't mind. Yeah, because yesterday we had a social work seminar and we were talking about Mosaic, which is the next step on from Framework I. So that's what I'm saying. That's I'm trying to say to you, can somebody speak to the development team in social work to make sure that Mosaic doesn't have a housing, a homelessness module attached to it? That's what a wee hint.
Yes, thanks, Joe. Just to reassure members, I am in discussion with social work services, and I've got a meeting lined up with the business systems development team manager. It's either this week or next week. So those discussions are taking place.
And Councillor Thompson.
Thanks again, Chair. It's just a recommendation. Part 2, you note the issues. I think it's probably paragraphs 3.4 to 3.15, but just to double check that we've got the right paragraphs in there. Okay.
Yeah, Chair, I heard John refer to a development plan, and the development plan is working. I just wonder if the committee would consider that we set up a working group of members and officers on this one to go through. What he described only took me back to a previous life of at least two people in this room when the houses were with the district council, and there was a working group, a liaison group between housing and social work when social work transferred. So, you know, there are experiences, people with experience in this room, and I think it's to use that experience in terms of how we look at that development plan through a short-term working group so that we move forward, because I don't think we have the luxury of time. I think it's referred to in page 5 under 9, and John referred to it, that there is tension between Scottish Government and the local authorities, although the Scottish Government has recognised, and hopefully there will be resources come that way. But, you know, it's the whole housing option, and as John described, we only provide a service. We've got to get to housing options much quicker, and that the staff are fully trained on that. So we need that development plan to do that, and I would favour a short-term working group of member officers.
Geddes?
I would actually agree with that, sir, and if Councillor Scobie wants to move it, I have no problems in seconding him. Irrespective of whether or not Councillor Maitland's shaking her head one way or another.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second, sir.
Well, I think we've still got a housing subcommittee that's dealing with a lot of this stuff at the moment, and I don't want to start crossing swords. I think Mr Hazel's pointed out we need to get straightened out who answers to who. So I'm not going to have two housing committees operating in the council. That would be my viewpoint. We need to go through the proper procedures. So if you want to wind up the present housing committee or have it report to this committee, set up a new one here, that's fine. There's absolutely no point in duplication of service, I would say. So I'd ask members to think again. Geddes?
Chairman, you're long enough in the tooth, and you're more than able to, to work out the distinction and the differentiation between a working group and a housing subcommittee. Come on, you're no fooling MD in here with your remarks. You're right. I mean, fair enough. Your view, you're just as entitled to your view as I am to mine. But come on, they're not the same things. They're a world of difference.
I'll put it this way: a subcommittee does have powers. Working groups don't. A working group is just a talking shop, and is there any point setting up a talking shop when we have got a current subcommittee that deals with housing? What's the purpose?
Chair.
Mr Haswell, perhaps you want to...
Could I suggest, Chair, if there's a strong feeling among the members to establish some kind of forum, happy to bring a report back to the next meeting, just to see what members feel about it, rather than just deciding today that you can have a working group. You don't know what its remit is, you don't know anything about what it's going to do, it's just a working group. So perhaps it would be better if you actually looked at it and looked at what the potential for a remit is, because an awful lot of this stuff's just operational stuff that we need to churn out.
Okay, I'm interested in what other members have got to say. Councillor Maitland?
Well, Chairman, I note that we are going to receive further detailed reports to be submitted as part of your recommendation number 4, to be scheduled for this committee. So we get a chance to look at it, and I think it's quite clear to the officers that we all want to have a real chew over it, and I would suggest that you set aside maybe a day at that stage. I don't know what you can do with respect to the committee schedule, but I think it warrants focus. And if we can do that on basis of focus, possibly even discussing it beforehand and then have a committee, that might be the way forward. But I certainly think I would do it through the full committee. I think we all want to have a go at it.
Councillor Drybrook?
Aye, Chair, I would agree with that. I'd love to see a report coming back to see what the actual workings of a particular route would actually be, and if that's included already in the recommendations, then we come that way.
Okay. Councillor Geddes?
Thanks, Chair. Well, I have no problems in accepting with alacrity Mr Haswell's suggestion. I would hope that Councillor Scobie, as a mover of the motion, would agree to withdraw it on that basis.
Chair, I'm not of a mind to because I do see it, and I think it's relating back to the previous remarks made by Alistair, in that there are two different things. There is a working group that would be to establish what John referred to, and he refers to in his recommendation, in looking at it, the issues between 3.2 and 3.13. However, I will give way on it and withdraw to allow this to come back, and then we look at what it means, because we need to improve on the service as delivery. So I'm quite happy to have it come back under another report.
Councillor Carolus?
Quite happy, Chairman. I'm assuming members are agreeing the recommendations in the report, and we will bring back a report on the ways in which the service delivery can be overseen by members.
Chair, on 2.2, I would prefer we change note and put agree the issues within the homeless service that need to be addressed in detail, particularly to training of staff on that, and change that recommend rather than just a note, but agree and that we get, on the emphasis on the training of staff in the immediate.
Just for the record, if we're agreeing to something, can I just make sure it's 3.4 to 3.15 rather than 3.2 to 3.13? Thanks.